The Town Plan and Zoning Commission, October 24th meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary, read the roll. Here.
Commissioner Canillo?
Here.
Commissioner Clancy? Commissioner Fox?
Here.
Commissioner Payne?
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski?
Here.
Commissioner Woods?
Here.
Commissioner Batalika? Commissioner Braverman?
Here.
Commissioner Hamgrave?
I have Commissioner Braverman sit in for me on the, been sitting for me on the 550 Cedar Street, and then he'll be sitting in for Claffey for the rest of the meeting. So we'll be having two roles here. You can't hear? Can you hear me now? Okay. Approval of the agenda, Mr. Town Planner.
I have no changes beyond the revised agenda that was posted this morning, and the agenda itself is in the packet that the commissioners had when they sat down. The change is the addition of, under new business, item E, to discuss, item D, to begin discussing the motor vehicle text amendment. I inadvertently left that off the agenda that was posted. So that's the only change, but you don't need to prove it because it's already on the agenda that was been filed with the town clerk.
Okay. Public participation, anyone wishing to speak at this time from the public, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, John Bashan, 56 Maple Hill Avenue. If some of you have been watching the town council meetings, I've been raising some issues about the question about the requirements and the applicability of the 824 referral system. So is my contention that what's going on over at the former bus garage property requires an 824, not only to tear the garage down, it's a little late for that, but also for what's going on there. There's expansion and the parking area has been expanded. So I don't mean to drive a wedge between this commission and the council, but I just wondered if anyone could, if you might weigh in on it, if you have any opinions on it at all. The question that came up at the council, and to give them credit, they did ask for an explanation from the town attorney. So right now we're waiting for that. But there seemed to be some confusion. One of the questions was, how do we know when one is needed, when an 824 is needed, and who tells us? So I have a feeling, and I believe the town attorney's even weighed in on it before, the general rule of thumb is when in doubt, you just do it. It's not that complicated. In some towns, it's almost like a rubber stamp. They actually put their whole CIP project list through that process every year. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If anyone has a comment, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, it's something that's been on the agenda for the town council at this time. Maybe the commissioners, if there's a comment or want to react to Mr. Bashan's inquiry about the 824. Payne?
Yeah. Since he asked for our comments, I agree with John. I agree with you. It probably should have been an 8-24. If you look back at the town attorney's opinion when the farmland was being used as a lay-down area on Church Street, it was determined that even for a lay-down area, you need an 8-24. And to avoid problems, the town attorney basically said, if you're not sure, it's best to have one anyway. So I agree with you, John, but that's out of our hands. The council sends it to us, and then we review it. Thank you.
No, this commission does not have the authority to just do an 824. It has to be referred from the council. And I believe that in the past, before the town manager that's there now, the town manager before would advise the council that these items had to come for 824 review. and we have not seen a lot of things come. I don't know, there's a lack of communication somewhere. I don't know what else we could do as a commission, because we could only act on them when it's referred from the council down to us. Unless I'm missing something, Mr. Planner.
No, you're right.
Okay, you're pursuing it on a different level, John, with the town attorney to,
Council requested, yes.
yeah, okay. Anyone else in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll, under the next remarks by commissioners, I'd like to change the agenda and have someone come up on an item that came up this week.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm Michelle Carlson from BL Companies, licensed professional engineer. And I'm here to talk about the application that I was before you with months ago now at this point, next to the Modern Tire site there between Olympia Diner and Modern Tire. We had intentions to connect to the sanitary sewer system behind Modern Tire. Our applicant thought he had a legal easement to connect to that sewer. There were issues with the legality of that easement, and it wasn't made out to the right entity. And suffice to say, that isn't legal, so we don't have a legal right. That's one issue. The other issue is the manhole that we are to connect into is buried under 10 feet of rubble. When Modern Tire decided to expand their parking lot in the rear, they just pushed the dirt further out and they buried that manhole. And we had meetings on site with MDC with Mr. John Myrtle was actually out there. We've spoken with Mike Curley at MDC, and they recognize that it needs to be fixed. And so what we did in interest of time for our client is he got a septic system approved in case we can't tie into the sewer. He's ready to start construction. I know MDC is ready per conversations with them over the last 2 days to go out there and assess the situation and try and fix it so we can tie into that manhole. I think if we can get access to it and with some help, we can also get an easement and be able to tie into it. That's our preferred route. But if we can't get something figured out and agreed to, this year, it's going to be problematic for our client to tie into the sewer. He's going to have to put a septic system in, and he'd rather tie into the sewer.
It's been a procedure of this commission for a number of years that if the sewer is in the vicinity of the property, you have to tie in.
Right.
And we approved this plan based on you tying into sanitary sewer, which you
Correct.
showed on your
Correct.
approved site plan. Mr. Payne is a commissioner on the Metropolitan District. He had conversations with the district, and maybe he could fill us in on some of those conversations, because there's a solution to this without putting in a septic field. We would look, I personally would not look favorably on a septic thing, because right at the bottom of the hill, you're up on an elevation. On the bottom of the hill is your couple hundred feet from the wetlands, and the wetlands map that they use to look at, it's not showing the complete size of the pond that is expanded almost to the property line of your property because of a beaver dam that has made that pond expand. So you'd be dumping your leach field into basically a protected or a water course, or an area where it could go right into a water course. There's
Right.
Four members of the Environmental Quality Commission sit on this commission: Mr. Fox, Mr. Camillo, myself, and
Yeah,
Mr.
but right now, the septic system is shown in the front of the building between the Berlin Turnpike and the building, but our client much preferred to go connect to the sewer. And I know about the beavers. When we worked on the Stu Leonards, we fought them, and, we had to move them numerous times. So whatever we can do.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I told the applicant that I would help facilitate meetings between the three different parties, the MDC, O'Reilly's, and Modern. I met with the engineers at the MDC, and they believe that they can come up with a new plan to relocate a new manhole approximately 25 feet downline and abandon the other portion. And I will work immediately with the applicant and the MDC to try to facilitate the hookup.
Sure, that's much appreciated. That's what we want to do.
Any commission comments or questions about what's going on here? Steve?
Mr. Chairman, would the applicant, or actually in the end, the owner, if in fact the permission was granted to put in the septic system only until the sewer was accessible, would you then abandon?
Absolutely, but the preference would be to not even have to do that. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that was the only question I had.
Yeah.
I don't know what the financial costs are, but I think a septic system compared to tying into a manhole that they're talking about, a new manhole, I don't know where to finance it, but I think it's got to be more money to tie into the manhole than to put in a full septic system.
Just from a reliability standpoint, if you have sewer right there, you'd
Because
rather
there
tie
was
into it.
I don't know how the former tenant was a cabinet maker, how he was working there if this septic system that was there failed. Was he working without a toilet?
He has a septic system there. I mean, it's right behind the
They said
building.
that it failed, that's why
Yeah. I don't know.
because you would just use the existing system that's
No,
there.
we'd build a new one. We got a new one approved in the front of our proposed building between the Berlin Turnpike and where that building is going. It's nowhere near the corner there where the existing system is.
Okay.
And like I said, we want to work with everybody and connect to the sewer.
How fast do you think that?
It's all about timing, and I think that if we have some early meetings and work together on designing something, then we should be able to facilitate something to meet their schedule so
And
that they
it's
can start
Yeah, and it's
construction.
my understanding that Matt, who works for me in my office, spoke with John today, and he said they were ready to get out there and clear and mobilize, and then they kind of didn't hear back from anybody, so they stopped. So I think they're ready to help, too.
Yes.
Is Modern Tire on board with this?
That's been the trouble.
Well, there's letters that I've seen that back and forth from,
We met on site with Modern Tire, but it's, they filled in the manhole. I think they have a septic system, if I understand right. They're not
No,
even
they're
tied
hooked
into
up
it.
to the sewer system, and they have been cooperating.
Okay, good.
So I don't think we'll have any problems.
Okay.
okay. So if the commissioners agree that we'd want to try to hook up to the sewer, that's our best route, that's what we approved.
And that's the best route, obviously.
Yeah, and if this fails, then you'd have to come back and we'd have to talk about it again, because we're
Okay.
not excited about the septic system.
Yeah, hopefully we can get something, figured out this year, and then we'll be fine.
Okay. So you work with Dominic or?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'll work with
the
Vice Chairman
staff?
Payne.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you
very
for
much for the
letting me go
update.
first. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Next item on the agenda is public hearing. I'm going to sit out for the item A and B, and then sit back in for the other public hearings. And then under new business, I'll sit out again for the three Dakota items. So I'll turn it over to the Vice Chairman.
Okay, if I could have the secretary read the procedures for the public hearing, please?
The order of proceedings at a public hearing shall be as follows. Convening by a chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by applicant limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitation should be varied slightly, provided the commission's consents to any such variance. In no case shall the extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Okay, the applicant's here. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Attorney Tim Hollister, representing the applicant, with Mark Pillett from Dakota, Mr. Walter and Mr. Allman from Benish and Company. I passed out from some materials. I know you'd be disappointed if I came without materials, but I would point out that when we were here 2 weeks ago, I gave you what we called the applicant's final materials. So this is our final materials. When we left last time, you had given us 4 issues to look at: sidewalks, school bus pickup and drop-off, pedestrian safety, and then we wanted to respond further to the Economic Development Director's comments from last time. So I'm going to take those in reverse order. First, the Economic Development Director said that essentially we were proposing cheap construction and implied that we had not cooperated, and I took issue with that. But just to prove the point, the last 2 pages of what I just gave you is a copy of what we submitted to you back in the end of August 22nd, which was a response to a long list of requests for improvements, upgrades, and so forth that the town planner had given us, and those are our responses. You can go through them, and I think it's the only fair conclusion is we basically, in this response and throughout the process, have done pretty much everything that we have been asked to do, including upgrades. On the issue of pedestrian safety, and this is not anything new that we didn't cover, but I just want to reiterate 2 points. Of course, it would be ideal if we had sidewalks extending, 2 miles east and west of the site. We understand that. But what we were trying to convey last time, and I'll just go over it again, is 2 things. The first is an applicant is entitled to a presumption that people are not going to walk in a place where they will put themselves in danger. We can't assume that they will. But second, there are several places in Newington, and we've put together a list of a couple of 6 of them, where either it's a residential development that doesn't have sidewalks to services or public transportation, or it leads to a road that does not have that. The point being that, again, sidewalks are ideal, but not having them is not dangerous inherently. It's not unsafe. There are some people who, just rely, either they don't have transportation, they rely on friends, relatives, ride-sharing, public transportation to get from point B. So we just want to say that we're agreed it's not ideal, but we don't think it's a safety issue. Now, on the school bus pickup and drop-off, Mr. Allman, who is here, conferred with Newington Public Schools, confirmed that the school bus pickup and drop-off will be on the north side at the location of the bus shelter that we've shown now for several weeks on the site plan. We looked at, and again, Mr. Allman and Mr. Walter are here if you have specific questions, but we looked at the design of a pull-off on the north side of Cedar Street, and our conclusion as a team was it's really not a safe, or certainly not a safer design, because then you have the bus pulled over at the far north or the right side if you're heading west, and that bus is really, with its lights on and the sign, is not going to be visible across the lanes of traffic. So we looked at that option and just decided it was not the best option. So we proposed to use the bus shelter and bus stop that we have previously put on the plans. And then finally, Mr. Allman talked to Mr. Barnes at Newington Public Schools, and who told us that the buses will be able to turn around after they make their pickup or drop off on the north side heading west. In his words, it would not be a problem, quote unquote. Okay, so that brings us to sidewalks, and we have some detail to get into. So you tasked us with going back to Department of Transportation
And Mr. Ullman and Mr. Walter have done that at a pretty extensive meeting. And, excuse me, we have a report and a proposed condition of approval. As we've said before, Dakota as an applicant doesn't have any legal obligation to extend sidewalks beyond its own frontage. But as has been our practice now for the past 7-8 weeks, because you asked us to go back to DOT, we did so. And so basically, we have what I will call an agreement in principle that the DOT said they are willing to work with the town and the applicant to extend the sidewalk on the north side of Cedar Street approximately 1,200 lineal feet to the west to I'm going to be very precise about this, ending at the driveway behind the service station at the corner of Fenn and Cedar on the northeast corner. And if you look at the aerial that is in part of your package, there's a blue line there that indicates the lateral extent of the sidewalks that we discussed with DOT. The construction of the sidewalk will involve some flexibility, some waivers on the part of DOT. We can't meet their strict construction standards with regard to width and a snow shelf, but they said, and again, Mr. Ullman and Mr. Walter were the ones who had the meeting, they said that they would work with us to come up with an acceptable design as long as it's ADA compliant and otherwise safe. So we have put together a draft condition of approval, and I tried to get this to Mr. Minor yesterday, but as you can imagine, it took a little bit of wordsmithing to make sure that we were comfortable with it, but I'm just going to take it. So this is on page 1 of today, the memo that has today's date. I'm just going to walk you through this piece by piece. So the proposed condition, the site plan, this would be a condition of site plan approval. The site plan is approved with a condition that Dakota Partners as applicant will use its best efforts. Now that's an important phrase. The only reason we said best efforts, which is a common legal term, is we don't have a signed agreement with DOT. I can't represent that we do that. DOT doesn't move that fast, but we have an agreement in principle. Well, all right, so we'll use its best efforts to work with the town of Newington and the Connecticut Department of Transportation to design and install a sidewalk along the north side of Cedar Street within the state's right-of-way, a distance of approximately 1,200 linear feet, ending at the driveway behind the service station located at the northeast corner of Fenn and Cedar. An aerial illustration of the proposed sidewalk is attached. The total cost estimated by Mr. Walter and Mr. Ullman's firm, design and installation hard and soft costs of the sidewalk is estimated to be $260,000. If Dakota receives all final permits and approvals, including state financing, meaning the tax credit application that would follow your approval of this application, if they receive that state financing for the proposed residential construction at 550 Cedar Street, as well as all approvals necessary to install the sidewalk, Dakota will contribute $260,000 to the town of Newington and or the State Department of Transportation to be used for the design and installation of the sidewalk in a manner that the parties deem acceptable and appropriate. Now, I purposely kind of tried to give everybody a little leeway in this because, again, at this point, we don't have a signed agreement with DOT, so we're committing in principle to an amount that we believe would pay for the design and the installation. But there would have to be essentially a construction agreement as to where the money would be paid, how it would be used for the construction, and so forth. All right, back to the condition. Such contribution will be made within 90 days of Dakota's receipt of all final permits and approvals for residential development and closing of the financing for its residential development. The intention for sidewalk installation will be completion prior to the issuance of any certificate of occupancy for a residential unit at 550 Cedar Street. It is understood that the maintenance and snow removal along the sidewalk will be beyond the 550 Cedar Street property will not be Dakota's responsibility. And then finally, in light of the best efforts nature of this condition, failure to obtain permission or permits to arrive at an acceptable financial arrangement for the installation of the sidewalk, or failure to complete the installation by the intended date referred to above, will not be considered a violation of or site plan approval, a violation of site plan approval for 550 Cedar Street, and may not be a basis for withholding any building permit or certificate of occupancy for residential units at 550 Cedar Street. So that last sentence is intended just to reflect the reality. If the DOT doesn't give us permission, we don't want that to be a reason that we don't get to proceed with the residential construction. So I hope you believe and agree that we have done everything that we could to go to the DOT, get a commitment, put real money on the table, and take it as far as we can. I should note that if you look at the far western expanse, where at that driveway that proceeds to the north, that of course is not our property; it's private property. I believe my understanding is there's a private developer involved with that site, and you know, if this sidewalk is built, hopefully that sidewalk would fall into place and would then connect to the sidewalk that goes into the fast track station. But we took it as far as we thought we could with DOT within their right of way. So, Stephen, Will, is there anything you want to add to what about your conversation?
Could they come up and explain the construction of it? Is it, is the whole thing going to be 5 feet wide, like the bridges are right now, or just, explain a little bit what is going to be involved?
Steve Ullman with Alfred Benish and Company. I'm the traffic engineer for this project. We went out and field measured every so often along it, and the width between the back of the curb and the face of the guide rail varies from about 5 foot, 5'3" to about 8 feet. Okay. For ADA, they want a 5-foot walk. If you cannot provide a 5-foot walk, a 4-foot walk is acceptable as long as you have a 5x5 turnaround. I think it's every 225 feet. We believe we can construct that. We met with Kevin Campbell at District 2 permits. We discussed where to place the sidewalk, where we would fit it. Their standard would be to have a minimum of a 3-foot grass strip between the curb and the sidewalk for snow, signs, everything. If we only have 5 feet between the curb and the guide rail, we don't have that room. Problem with the guide rail is right at the top of the slope of most places there. There is no room at all to move the guide rail. We discussed moving the guide rail to the curbside and putting the sidewalk behind. Now you have a problem with pedestrians falling down the slope, and because you have 3 structures, you need the guide rail at the structure parapet, so you need the guide rail in the back. They would prefer that we leave the bituminous concrete curbing in place and place our sidewalk behind it, so that the curbing is not integral to the sidewalk. They actually preferred that. On other projects they haven't, but this district prefers that. It would be a concrete or a bituminous sidewalk, probably 5 foot in length for the very most of it. There would be sections where we might have to go to 4 feet just because you have to have that clear zone with the guide rail.
How much clearance is there on the bridges there? Are they 8 feet of sidewalk?
6 to 8.
6 to 8 on all the bridges?
On the bridges.
Okay.
The other thing that came out of this is that even though some of this property is owned by the DOT, behind the DOT right-of-way, they are exempt from maintenance of the sidewalk. They would not maintain the sidewalk any way, shape, or form. In their mind, it would be the ownership of the sidewalk would be town of Newington. So that's their thought process on it. He did say they do want to work with us. There have been directives that the department needs to be more proactive to addressing the needs of all users, bicyclists, pedestrians, cars, so that even though the sidewalk, if placed, would not meet their desired standards, because they have this need to meet the needs of people, that they would be willing to work with us on it. And that was the outcome of the meeting. He was going back to talk to his construction people in the district and construction people, traffic and rights-of-way people in Newington. That was going to get back to us. We met with him about a week ago. I think it was last Tuesday or a week ago today. He said it might take a week or two to get back to us, but he was going to go forward with it. With him were two other members of his staff, Kelly McGinnis, and I don't know the other person. They both were encouraging to us about doing it. There's some other design issues that came up in the meeting that we'd have to meet, but those were all design issues that we could do, no problem. But the bottom line is that they understand the need for the sidewalk, and they would be more than willing to work with us on it. However, they would not pay for it, and they would not maintain it.
So are they saying that they don't maintain any public sidewalks on the state of Connecticut's property at all?
That's what they said. I don't know if there may be exceptions to that, but they typically do not maintain sidewalks. That's the town's responsibility for snow removal, maintenance, and everything else.
Thank you. Any questions for the commissioners?
Just to let you know, they do maintain the sidewalks on the bridges, take the snow load off.
Okay. No,
Keep,
the bridge.
that's considered dead snow load there.
Okay.
There are a couple of spots where they do maintain sidewalks, but normally they do have a court case, a Superior Court case, that decided that the DOT is not responsible for anything outside the curb limits of the road.
Mm-hmm.
So it either falls to the property owner or the town. Okay? I do have another question here, though. I noticed, this is for Attorney Hollister, I noticed when you cited these apartments here with no sidewalks, especially like Victory Garden Apartments, there is sidewalks on Willard Avenue. Okay, so we're only talking a short distance down.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. The other issue is we're dealing with a road that has approximate volume of 33,050 cars a day. Willard Avenue only has 17,000. Yeah, so that was my concern here.
Okay.
There is a difference when you want to compare where we have sidewalks and where we don't with this. Okay?
I'm not gonna.
No, I've got the DOT numbers here.
Okay.
Okay, so my question is that even though you said there's various apartment complexes in town that don't have sidewalks, the volumes of traffic aren't as dangerous as they are on Cedar Street. Okay?
I agree.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
Okay. As far as the other issue with maintenance of the sidewalk, I'm not sure what it's going to cost the town of Newington to maintain that sidewalk. Okay? But that's another expense now the town is going to have to absorb, which is a sizable amount, I would think, per storm, because that's a 4-lane road, and when it's plowed with double echelon, you're taking 2 lanes of snow and you're throwing it on top of that sidewalk. And that means they're going to have to get out there almost immediately to do snow and ice control. No,
I
I'm just.
don't know what the cost of clearing the sidewalks is. We were asked to talk to
No,
DOT about a sidewalk.
I fully understand. I'm just making a point. That's all.
Commissioner Fox?
Yeah, all this site plan talk is very interesting, Mr. Chairman, but aren't we supposed to be talking about the text amendment, petition 24-18? So let's talk about the text amendments, please. Okay? Because right now, I really don't know if I can even vote on the text amendment portion of your application.
Excuse me, Commissioner Fox. This was just some small questions for the information that he's provided us now. We're going to go to the public, and then we're going to close the public hearing, and then we're going to have a conversation and a discussion after the public hearing is closed. It's up to you whether or not you want to ask a question now or whether or not you think it's appropriate to wait until after the public hearing is closed. I'll leave it up to you.
Well, Mr. Acting Chairman, once we close the public hearing, we really can't talk about modifying any the text amendments or anything like that.
Yes, we can.
And and I don't know, maybe it is too late because It is understood that the applicant is really, pressing for a vote tonight. And like I said, as it stands now, I personally cannot, can't really give an intelligent vote unless I at least try to get some of this out in the open.
You have concerns with the regulation, I guess you could state your concerns now, but we will be able to talk about that after the public hearing's closed. And if there's things in the proposed that you don't like, this commission can modify it.
After the public hearing is closed?
Yes.
I'm happy to
Okay,
answer.
all right,
Commissioner Fox's
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Why don't you bring up your concerns now?
All right, I mean, I have gone through these concerns with Attorney Hollister, I think at the last meeting briefly, and I brought up, kind of a little general, I brought up the question 3.26.5, it talks about home occupations according to 3.3.3 and 3.4.4. Limiting home businesses to 25%, prohibits service business. And I'm just wondering how you would expect to monitor something like this. I mean, we have a number of apartments here. We have 108 units, not knowing how many, how many units would have home occupations in it, but, it could prove to be a problem, I think.
Well, you can ask for that information at the time of leasing. Are you intending to engage in a home occupation or a personal business use? And the tenant should disclose that.
Yeah.
And particularly with the affordable units, most of which are 90%, that you can enforce that as a condition to make sure that they're, in other words, someone should not, if they report their income as X, but they don't report it, they're not being truthful about their occupancy.
I don't know what to say to that, but as I'm asking. I mean, when we hear a public a special permit for home occupations, we usually kind of give them approval for a certain amount of time, and with inspections. Okay, now in spite of the fact that there's a statement here that about conflict of provisions, 3.26.31, would the town planning and or the planner and the zoning commission it would be possible that we would be able to monitor that?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really say that, but
we could add that to 3.26.5. Say, the landlord, subject to further oversight by the zoning enforcement officer and the commission, shall monitor compliance, however you want to say it. But that's fine.
that sounds good with me.
But, excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
It says on 3.26.31 that if any of these provisions are in conflict with our zoning laws, the zoning text amendment will supersede them. That's my concern.
Okay. If that, I actually don't think there's any conflict between what we're proposing and the rest of the Newington zoning regulations. So if your preference is to take that last section out, we can live with that.
Well, it's of concern to me,
Take it out.
Well,
We can talk about that afterwards.
the other thing, I'm going to skip back just a minute. Attorney Hollister, didn't we ask last month that Chief Clark?
I'll turn to the town planner for a
Yes.
report on that.
Wrong person, sorry. Didn't we ask for Chief Clark to do some research to find out what the calls were and the type of calls?
I got an email from Chief Clark Thursday afternoon, the Thursday after the meeting. And in the email, Chief Clark asked me to clarify that the commission wanted him to have his staff do the research that was discussed at the meeting before. And my off-the-cuff response was that was my understanding, but that I would check with the chairman to confirm that, or the acting chairman. So I spoke to the acting chairman the following day, and we discussed it. And the acting chairman told me that if the chief wanted to do research into the hiring practices at other establishments that are under Dakota's control, that the commission would receive that information at the hearing and left it at that.
I thought this commission had asked that be done. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that's what that was, we were asking that.
Yeah, it was a little unclear, so I left it up to the chief. If he felt that he wanted to add it in, he could. Commissioner Fox.
Okay, not for nothing, Mr. Acting Chairman, but if you weren't clear, I'm wondering why you couldn't just send us an email and ask our opinions. I mean,
You want to pull the minutes out? You want to look at the minutes?
Don't we have the right to, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we wanted it.
I left it up to the chief. If he felt that it was important to add it and to send it to this commission, it was totally up to him. I didn't tell him not to. So,
Well, I think that we had the right to be able to make that decision, rather than just having you tell.
this commission never asked for it originally. We don't even know where it came from originally.
What came from?
When the chief first looked at that information, this commission never asked him to look into that information. That came out of the blue. Okay, this commission didn't ask him for it. Commissioner Woods.
Yeah, well, I beg to differ with you.
I would agree with you. I don't believe this commission asked for that report originally, but I do believe at the last meeting it was clear by several of the commissioners the reason that we didn't want to take action and move this application forward is because Chief Clark did have a concern, and he did actually asked Attorney Hollister to present him with a report. The chief wasn't happy, and the chief volunteered to do this. And again, that's why I decided to hold off and wait for his report. And obviously the report's not coming now.
And I made it clear to the town planner that if the chief felt that he was really adamant about doing some additional research, that it was totally up to him.
I guess maybe that message didn't get back to the chief.
No, that message got back to the chief.
Then why did the chief not do it? Do we know?
The chief wanted, to be blunt, the chief wanted to be asked. The chief was willing to do it if he was asked to do it, and the answer came back short of him being asked to do it.
But, Mr. Chairman, but we weren't asked. I mean, it's a fact, we weren't asked. You essentially made that decision for us.
I did not make
And if I'm not mistaken, the basic reason why we are here tonight and with the public hearing still open is because we wanted to hear what the chief had to say or read a report from the chief and be able to discuss it tonight. Whether or not it would have anything to do with it, we wanted to be able to discuss it tonight, because if we had closed the hearing last meeting, we wouldn't have been able to. So and that's basically it, Dominic. That's the way I feel, and I think that's
Well, I wasn't going to dictate to the chief what to do and what not to do. He was a little unclear whether or not this commission.
He was asking us what we wanted him to do.
And it was a little unclear from the minutes whether or not, because not everybody speaks up in the meetings. I asked the planner.
We all spoke up.
Well, we can pull the minutes out right now and review them
Well,
if you
go
want.
ahead, because I asked once, we're talking to Attorney Hollister, and I asked through you, I asked the town planner, if we closed it that night, would we be able to review Chief Clark's comments?
Like I said,
No, that we'd have to leave it open, and that's when you
I had no
asked
knowledge
us to
that,
leave it open.
I have no knowledge that the town planner now is saying that he wanted to be asked. When this came in front of me, I told the town planner if the Chief Clark wants to provide us with additional information, that's his privilege to do though, so, okay?
All right, so it doesn't look like I'm going to get anywhere. We'll leave it as it is, and just, that I want to put on the record that, I don't know how to put it. I'm not happy, and let's say I'm doing this under protest.
Any other questions? Commissioner Woods.
No, I'm finished for now. Thank you.
I want to go back to just a simple question on the, I believe it's Kevin Campbell is who you met with at DOT? I wrote that down. Did I hear that correct? Okay. Thank you. That was all I had right now.
Okay. Do you want to talk about that subject in general, Mr. Fox?
What subject?
The comparison of the crime, of proposed possible crime in Newington compared to the other towns?
I
That's
don't know
what
if
it
it
was
makes any
about.
sense now. I would have liked to see some other research, some other, get some other information on the, on some more. Basically, Attorney Hollister, brought forth a point that, Chief Clark was only, talking about, three of the Dakota Partners properties, and he has hundreds and hundreds. And I don't know, if Chief Clark was able to, get some more information on some of the other some of the other hundreds and hundreds, we might have been able to discuss it more intelligently. Right now, I don't think we can.
We can figure out don't you think the makeup of each town is important? The makeup of each town is different. And so how do you compare town of Newington to another town that has a different makeup, okay? Could be different population, could be all kinds of different things. So how do you do that? And how do you say, I think this is going to have a lot of crime here, so we're not going to approve it based on the presumption that there's going to be crime? How do you do that?
Page 7, third paragraph, last sentence in the paragraph, from me. I have to agree, a lot of things that we do, even when we are being compared to, say, Weathersfield, etc., this is Newington and not any of the other towns. So I feel that whatever decision we do make has got to be apropos to Newington. So the only way we can do that, I mean, is to just kind of see, what happens with other towns, and then possibly, compare to Newington, if that would be the same as here in Newington. I mean, I don't, who knows? Maybe he would have been able to research towns with, 50, 60,000 people, or maybe 10 and 15,000, while we have, just about 30,000. But I still would have liked to be able to compare them and then kind of make a decision or decide whether it has any bearing on what we're doing here.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I seem to remember correctly, I think the question might have been the type of service calls. And I think that's what the issue is. The type of service calls. And I believe, I'm trying to remember now, I think Attorney Hollister said some of them were paramedic calls where police would automatically respond.
Crime watch calls?
Yes, crime watch calls, vandalism, whatever. I think that's what the chief was looking at. He was looking to see in the town of Brookfield, which was, I think, 3 point something, all right, and Barnes something up there on a Cape was 4 point something. I think that's what he was questioning, to see what he would have to do to put an additional district on. Okay, I think that's what he was looking at, and that's why we kept this open, because we wanted to know the type of calls in those areas. And that's, and no offense to you, but when you say, yeah, 30% of them are crime calls, the other 70% or something, I'd like to see some hard figures. That's all I was looking for.
And the applicant's point was calls to the police statistics is not in any way, shape, or form a prediction of whether a particular residential development in a particular town is going to be safe or unsafe, subject to crime, not subject to crime.
That's not what what I'm trying to allude to here is the fact that if a certain section, a certain condo complex, or whatever the complex may be, because the elderly requires more calls for service, that's what he was looking at. Okay, whether or not he has to add another district on, or whether or not he needs to do something else. That's, I think, what he was asking.
Okay, and what I was taking issue with is that from the statistics on the number of police calls to a particular residential, or from a particular residential complex, that the chief could then predict his need for uniformed officers in the town of Newington at this complex. I don't think, that's dots that you cannot connect. Is that what you mean by?
No, what I'm saying is if we have a complex, okay, and we do have one in town that requires a little more service than the rest of them,
Right.
okay?
Which one are you talking about?
Victory Gardens, okay?
That,
Requires a little more police service than most of the other condos or apartments. So I'm asking a question. If you tell me 30% of those calls are crime, fine. Then the other 70% are police assistant for medical. That's what he was looking at, I think. And so I'm not looking to say your property is going to do this. I'm just asking what in general, because we have three properties in Connecticut that have this same complex makeup. And that's what he was looking to
What then
see.
would be the point of what would be the relevance of those statistics to your decision on this land use application? That's my question. I'm not asking you to answer that. I'm just saying that's the question I would ask.
Commissioner Fox.
But Attorney House, I think, I think that leads to a concern of mine. I mean, there would be a certain amount of either, crime calls, medical calls, fire calls from that complex, during a year. And I keep going back to traffic, and safety. And I think I mentioned at the last meeting that, driving any kind of emergency vehicle through traffic like you might get during peak hours is a heart pacing, a heart quickening situation, and there could be an accident in one of those, and some of them are multiple calls. If you have a medical call, the police are the first responders, then come the EMS, and with all these sirens and lights going, people driving along could get flustered, and there's a big chance of major accidents happening because this 550 Cedar Street was developed in this case.
And if 550 were developed for commercial use, like a grocery store or Stop and Shop or something, you'd have even more traffic than what's being proposed
Yeah, we
here.
probably would, but I'm not talking about a commercial development.
Well,
We're
traffic is traffic.
talking about Cedar Point.
All right,
And
one
what
at
it
a
would
time.
do.
Commissioner Braverman,
Okay.
you have the floor.
All right,
From
thank
my
you.
perspective and everything that I've heard, one of the impressions I got from Mr. Minor was that the chief wanted to be asked. Why don't we ask the chief, and why don't he provide a report? That's what I would like to see.
Okay, we'll get into that afterwards when we talk about it. If the applicant doesn't have anything else, and if there's no other questions, I want to open it up to the public and get the public taken care of here. All right.
Thank you, Mr.
All right. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name.
Hi, good evening. Ryan Beach, 16 Kenlock Street. First of all, I want to thank the commission. I think so far you've been very thorough in this investigation. I think, every time I come, questions are getting answered more and more. One thing I just want to put on the record is that personally, as a citizen of the town, I think the politics of development are beginning to overshadow its purpose. It's not about the traffic or the aesthetics. It's about building affordable housing for 108 families and individuals, which is drastically necessary in this state, in this town, and I think that this is our opportunity as a town to show that we believe in that. I don't think we should view this proposal as a challenge, but as an opportunity to extend what we feel is great to our neighbors most in need. We can be the town that says, yes, we will help. We will help figure out the traffic on the street. We will help build the sidewalk. We will figure out how to pick the kids up and get them into the schools, which I all believe that we think are excellent. And we will open our doors to our new neighbors. And I just think that's a really great opportunity here, and I don't think it's been mentioned until now. So I just went on the record. Thank you again for your hearty consideration of this project, and I'm sure you'll make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this application? please come forward. You're limited to 3 minutes, please.
Could you please not start the clock until I hand these out?
We have them. We all have them.
Are they this big that you could look at them? Because I'd like you to look at them while I'm.
You have black and white, though. You brought
yeah.
color in.
Yeah, this is color, it's kind of important.
All right, I'll use yours.
John Bashan, 56 Maple Hill Avenue. In all due respect for the one speaker who spoke for the project, the public safety issue is not about the rest of the residents in town. My main concern is about the residents that will be placed in harm's way of this application. If you look at, and I just wanted to get off right from the beginning, I'm sensing a little bit of partisanship here, or a partisan rift, and that's unfortunate because this commission has historically been so free of that, and it's really important. But I think I'm going to raise an issue that could go way beyond that, and there's no other question, and it comes down to the unabated safety concerns. So if you notice my drawing here, I didn't even consider pedestrian traffic going west. That's New Britain. If a Newington resident wants to go for a walk, they're going to want to walk to the east. That's where the commercial properties are there. Those are going to be pedestrian magnets. And so if you look, all the items in red are going to be the most direct routes, the most obvious paths that pedestrians are going to take. There's not a single one of them that is on a safe or a paved surface. In the wintertime, or a handicapped person, forget it. Someone raised the issue of potentially a handicapped person, what they would do. That would be a nightmare. But all these things show you that there is no safe way. You're crossing busy business driveways. You're walking either right on the edge of Cedar Street or in Cedar Street. So that's an absolute hazard. It trumps everything else. Traffic, even the crime statistics. I do agree with you, Chairman Payne, that, talking about the crime or potential for crime is a discretionary thing that you really can't make a decision on. You could use it to weigh a decision, but not to make a decision on it. I agree with you on that, but I think that the safety issue is, it's the lowest common denominator. There's nothing else that really matters when you consider this. It's 675 feet to the nearest sidewalk. Sidewalk going down Cedar Street to the west, I figure maybe 10% of the traffic is going to be going that way. 90% of it's going to be going east. To those businesses, to that food, and to those drinks, and to the points to the east, the center of town, whatever. People want to go for a walk with their baby stroller. They're not going to go to New Britain. So I don't know what the time is. We don't have a clock here, so I'm going to just read a little bit more. I'm just going to read the one thing, the final thing that Attorney Ancona laid out for you regarding the unabated safety concerns. Therefore, if there were a substantial health or safety risk that a developer cannot reasonably eliminate or ameliorate within the confines of state law, then such a risk may defeat an 830G application. So I went on to write that this is also self-evident. The developer, as he's confirmed again tonight, cannot ameliorate the serious safety issues within the confines of the parcel of which they have control over. All those agreements with the state and everything, that's hardly a guarantee that will ever get done. I just had a couple more notes here.
Yeah, please wrap it up when you can.
Okay, the presumption that people won't walk in the road, that's kind of saying that you have to approve it based on that. There's been a lot that tells you what you have to do, but you don't have to look the other way on the safety concerns, the serious safety concerns. And I'll just tell you that I ride my bike on that path now, and just paving it is not going to be enough. There's no breakdown lane on that road, and you're about 6 inches from moving traffic. So without a guardrail on the street side of that sidewalk, that would be an extreme hazard. So it's very sobering to ride a bike down there now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening. Clark Hestel, 167 Connecticut Avenue. A few months ago, I spoke at the first of these public hearings and expressed my support not only for workforce-assisted housing in general, but for the Dakota Partners Newington project in particular. This support was not unqualified, however, and I do remember expressing one reservation, although it was basically on aesthetic grounds. After noticing that the architect's rendering of the project seemed much less attractive than the completed projects showcased on Dakota Partners' website, the much better-looking development that is currently underway in New Britain, or the smaller version of the New Britain project formerly proposed for the National Welding Site. I actually have a photograph of it. I'm not going to be able to see it, but it is absolutely, it's almost stunning compared to what they've proposed here for Newington. I realize now that objecting on the basis of appearance alone was superficial. This after reading the town planner's memo of August 16th, in which he suggested that Dakota Partners incorporate, I believe, at least 25 or more suggestions for material and physical improvements into their project, and not just aesthetic ones. So my question is, how many of these have received positive, specific, unqualified acceptance, and which ones are they? Mr. Hollister recently, or just a few minutes ago, said that we had done, quote, pretty much everything that we have been asked to do. And my question to them is, does that mean unequivocal acceptance, or simply that the issue is being addressed? I'm also aware of the give and take between town staff and Dakota Partners representatives regarding the possibility of the latter upgrading their business plan, reworking their finances, and building something that is not of a lower quality than what they have built in other Connecticut towns. The notion that the sources of financing, CHFA and the like, have dictated a lower income tenant for Newington, which in turn requires or justifies lower construction standards, simply does not ring true to me. I understand that Dakota Partners can build whatever they want to build in Newington as long as they meet certain minimum standards. So I appeal to them for the sake of their own reputation, on behalf of their future tenants, and on behalf of the existing residential community of Newington. Please go back to the drawing boards and bring us a proposal. Bring back Cedar Grove at National Welding Site, anything that will look less like a blight on our community and more like a centerpiece that we can all point to with pride. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
Good evening, Scott Kraskowski, 46 Miami Avenue. I am a member of the Newington Economic Development Commission, but I'm here speaking tonight on my own behalf. I'm also administrator of the 13,000-member What's Happening in Newington Facebook group. This project here, the one thing that can stop it is safety concerns. And the more and more we dig into it, the more safety concerns we're hearing. Tonight we heard that a sidewalk is going to be built, but going the opposite way, going towards New Britain instead of going towards the center of town. Now, you've got people living there, and Attorney Hollister has said, well, they'll tell people that they can't walk in the street. You're going to have kids living there. Kids are going to want to go to the Citgo station and buy bubble gum or potato chips or something like that. How are they going to get there? They don't drive. You got a bar next door. If you're living in the complex and you want to go have a drink or three, you're not going to be driving to the bar and drunk driving coming back home. That's ridiculous. The safety concerns here are very, very valid, and they're not being addressed. And the reason for that is because this area is zoned for commercial use. It's not a residential zone, and has never been intended to be a residential zone. Ultimately, what this is Stop and Shop trying to unload this property that they've been holding on to prevent other companies from moving into Newington. And I think that's wrong. This application should not be approved. It should be denied because of the safety issues. Also, as Clark says, it's ugly. This is the gateway to our town. If you're coming into Newington from West Hartford or from New Britain, this complex is going to be the first real thing you see coming into this town. And we had a complex that wants to be built that looks like chicken coops. That's unacceptable. Let's take some pride here if they want to build it, and build something that we can all be proud of, like Clark said. Again, with safety in mind, and these issues not being resolved, TPZ must reject this application. There's no other way around it. Dakota Partners has not shown any solution for these safety issues, and there's a reason why that area is not zoned the way it is. It is not a residential area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
Dana Havens, 113 Stoddard Avenue. 98 acres of potential building around Cedar Street. I went to a presentation by the state for a train station that they have let us know that they want here in Newington. They proposed another area. They have said it's not large enough, and they now have their sights set on Cedar Street. And that happens to be right across the street from this planned housing. We think it's unsafe now. I think this is just going to cause more congestion, more danger for the children and anyone else who's living there. It's also said that we are below the 10% goal or mandate by the state for low-income housing, but we know that the train station itself is going to take 98 acres. We saw in the presentation that they're planning on building housing there. I highly doubt it would be high-end housing right next to a train station and train tracks. So if our goal is to raise our low-income housing, I think the state's going to help us with that within, the next few years. And I would just like you guys to keep that in mind when you're making these decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
Gail Bedraco, 21 Isabel Terrace. It's not actually at this point in opposition. I want to thank the developer. I'm really pleased that you were able to work something out about the sidewalks, because from my perspective, the issue isn't the lack of sidewalks, and I agree. There's plenty of places in Newington that don't have sidewalks. But to me, the issue is the targeted resident pool for this housing project is a resident pool that's most likely to be utilizing public transportation. So it's really key that there's a safe way for these residents to get to fast track. And personally, I think that most of the traffic will be going towards the pedestrian traffic, because as had been pointed out before, in comparison to some of your other projects, this is a lower AMI, which means that the workforce, they probably will not have multiple cars per family, and some of them might not even have a car. So safe access to fast track is key. So you made a really first good step. My problem is that, as you alluded to, you can't even build a safe sidewalk on that road the way it is now. I mean, it's a great first step. I appreciate it. During the summer and the spring, it might not be a problem, but during the winter, with the snow being pushed onto the sidewalk, it is going to become incumbent upon the town of Newington to make sure that that sidewalk is clear, safe, salted, and because there'll be, it could be a huge liability if somebody falls and hurts themselves, whatever. So I think, our in terms of the planning, certainly our highway department has to be involved in that. But we were talking back there, maybe another issue that you can discuss with the state is putting a fast track, a bus stop, like right outside of the project itself, that can take resident, and it doesn't have to be every hour or whatever, but take one of those empty buses that are driving around now and have it stop at Cedar Point here to get people safely to Connecticut Fast Track. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
Rose Lyons, 46 Alton Drive. This really isn't in opposition, and I'm going to end with what I started with when these hearings first began. There's 3 petitions before you based on Connecticut General Statutes 8-30G. And what I said was trust but verify. We've been told that the Department of Housing says that we have 8.23% affordable housing or workforce affordable housing in the town of Newington. Do we have the information to back up that percentage? I was given a list that gave the total housing units in 2010 census as 13,011 units. And of that, 1,078 were listed as either governmental assisted, tenant rental assistant, family, CHFA, or deed restricted units, which brought us to the 8.23. If you add 108 onto that, I think it'll bring us up to 9.11, but I have yet to been able to verify where these units are located. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
Chris Miner, 119 Revere Drive. First off, I'd like to thank Attorney Hollister and Dakota Partners for presenting. And I'd like to be clear that I'm not opposed to the project as a whole, but I am seriously concerned with some issues that I question whether or not can ever be resolved. First and foremost, that I don't believe has been touched on, is Cedar Street as a whole has no street lights on the north side of the property. And that is from Mazzacoli Way all the way to Fenton. There's no street lights. Everything is on the southern exposure of the street. The second thing is you have a distance of 1 mile, which is from Fenn Road to Old Farms East, that has no sidewalk. And some of that area does not have the ability to accept a sidewalk without modifications to properties. Next would be the road is 50 feet wide, being 4 lanes in width with approximately a foot shoulder on either side, which is neither acceptable for a pedestrian or a bicycle. I do not think it is Dakota's issue to try to resolve these issues. However, I believe it's a continued failure of the town of Newington and the state of Connecticut to not allow for pedestrian and safe egress to a new fast track station at Cedar and now a proposed train station also at Cedar. Posted speed limits on Cedar Street range from 35 miles an hour at Fenn Road, increasing to 45 miles an hour at Fast Track, back to 40 at Maple Hill, down to 30 at Willard, with the speed limit on the Berlin Turnpike set to 50. So a 5 mile per hour difference from the Berlin Turnpike to Cedar Street. I think it is a responsibility of this commission to at least consider these as being not in the discretion of Dakota to solve, but us as a community to solve first. An issue with the statistics that were being asked about by the police department, I don't believe, crime is not a statistic that I'm interested in. My considerations would be that of emotionally disturbed persons, domestic disturbances, medical calls. Victory Gardens, since its operation opened, has been a strain on our first responders at a regular basis. And I question whether or not we are compromising our existing first responders' ability to meet the needs of our residents by being altered by this land use change. In closing, I would ask to look at numerous incidents again with the police department in relationship to wheelchair-bound residents of Victoria Gardens getting into incidents on Willard Avenue where they needed assistance and created a public safety hazard. In closing, I just would want to remind you of one thing. The Berlin Turnpike is clearly posted as no pedestrians, mopeds, or bicycles. There have been 3 pedestrian fatalities in my 10 years on the fire department that have been simply crossing the road or walking down the road. I don't want to see this jeopardized by anybody else that doesn't have the ability to do otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Anybody else? All right, the applicant has time to rebut the public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'll just make some closing remarks. If there are lingering questions, and I guess now's the time to ask them. But please recall first that back 2 weeks ago, I gave you the first final supplemental materials. And at the last tab of that, tab 6, I listed what I thought should be the reasons for approval. I'm just going to go through those one more time. Number one, the applicant has modified and enhanced the architecture several times based on public comment and commission comment. I stand by my claim that we have responded to the requests from Mr. Minor and town staff to improve and upgrade interior amenities, security, quality of materials, everything that was asked. We have satisfied every single comment of the town engineer, which, by the way, were really to a construction level of detail. The parking ratio exceeds the ITE standards and is comparable to the existing regulations of the town. You're going to get a let's not forget, you're going to get a remediation of a site with contaminated soil in compliance with state regulations. There's going to be significant property tax generation. We agreed to the modified traffic light operation on Cedar Street. There's going to be a conservation easement that will be enforced with a fence. We arrived at a planting and landscaping plan in compliance or consensus with the Conservation Commission. I would emphasize that both the police department and the fire department reviewed this site plan and signed off on it. That's in the record, including most recently, Chief Clark was satisfied with the Hall Keene, that's the property manager, with their policy and procedures for disqualifying applicants who might present tenancy problems. You'll be getting workforce housing units that will meet a substantial need in the town and the region for economic diversity. This applicant has a proven track record of successful construction management. We have Conservation Commission approval, and tonight we have agreed to install sidewalks, both not just at our frontage, but 1,200 feet to the east at the applicant's cost and expense. I'll add that if you want to delete the last section of the proposed regulation about the conflict, that's fine with me as the applicant's representative. And if you want to clarify that the home inspections and personal home occupations would be subject to verification inspection, that can be added too. In general, Mr. Chairman, and not meaning in any disrespect, but as far as the rest of the comments tonight, I'm reminded of the story of the hardworking mother who buys 2 ties for her son and gives them to him, and he goes upstairs and puts one on and comes back down and shows it off proudly, and the mother says, "What's the matter? Don't you like the other tie?" I think we've done what we are capable of doing. I said several times, and I still say we have done what we've been asked to do. As far as the construction and this implication, this is cheap construction. Let's go back to the very first hearing. This is passive house construction, which is cutting-edge technology. This is the most energy-efficient construction that you can have, and it requires high-quality materials. There are some, not on the multifamily side, but on the single-family side, some passive homes don't even have a heat source. That's how well insulated and how well built they are. That's what this is. So we can talk about the exterior appearance. I thought we had gotten to the point 2 hearings ago that we had put that to bed, but the quality of the construction here really should not be questioned. I would point you back to tab 2 of the material, or excuse me, tab 3 of the materials from 2 weeks ago. We do need to close the hearing tonight. And I understand Commissioner Braverman's request. Let's ask the chief. We are 7 days away from an application financing deadline. As I said last time, don't anybody think that the application is going away if we don't meet that deadline, but it is the deadline we have been working for since we filed this application 4 months ago. We would like to close tonight. We would like your decision so that we know where we stand. I guess, I hear the comments about pedestrian safety. I guess for those who maintain that we are setting up an unsafe situation, we're going to agree to disagree. But I just have to say that if we got into a court situation, and I'm not, I've tried really hard not to beat this commission over the head with 830G because I don't think the situation warrants it. But, no court is going to say is going to uphold a denial on the theory that people are going to walk in the street in an unsafe manner. There's plenty of precedent for that. There are developments where people who can't drive don't live, and maybe this would be, but there are plenty of people who do drive or who have other means of transportation that would probably be who would be attracted here. That's all I have to say in terms of wrap up. So finally, I want to thank Mr. Minor. I want to thank the secretary, and I want to thank the town staff for listening to us. I know up or down or sideways, we've been given a fair hearing, I think we have done our best, and so we will welcome your decision and hope that we could get that guidance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The opposition has an opportunity to rebut anything. If there's somebody from the audience that wants to rebut, please come forward.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I just am curious if you do have proof that these applications fall under 830G. That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak as a rebuttal?
Chris Weiner, just one quick clarification. The statement made regarding the sidewalks has been an issue that was brought forward right from the beginning. And Attorney Hollister tonight stated that should DOT in Newington not be able to agree on a planned development of the sidewalks, that would not preclude Dakota from proceeding with its development. So basically they're saying, yes, we're willing to do the sidewalks. However, this has been a long-standing problem that DOT and Newington have not been able to resolve on their own. I just find it very difficult that it's going to be a third party that's going to be able to mediate something that will only give us sidewalks in one direction to the west. To the east is just simply not obtainable. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Could our town planner, do you have Rose Lyons' question?
Excuse me. Yes, I have in my files a pretty complete list of where all of the units are that the state gives Newington credit for as being affordable housing. The only ones I don't know the actual addresses for are the homes that are VA mortgages or Farmer FMH mortgages, because I guess that's kind of confidential. And I also don't know, because it's not public information, where the Section 8 apartments are in Newington. That's just not public information. But we do know where every unit of affordable housing is that Newington has been given credit for, such as Victory Gardens, some of the other, the Southfield is on the list. The elderly housing, semi-high-rise next to the senior and disabled center, that project, name escapes me, New Samaritan. Okay, that project is on the list. So yes, we do know where every unit that we've been given credit for is located.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, commissioners, we've heard from the public.
Give us a chance to finish.
If you come up, this is it. This is the last opportunity for rebuttal only.
I don't consider this really a rebuttal, but I have two comments. I was listening to the discussion over whether or not Chief Clark was going to do some research into the emergency responses to other Dakota Partners complexes in Connecticut. I don't understand where this kind of confusion comes from. I really don't. I've actually, as you may recall, participated in situations like this where things got out of, I don't say things got out of hand, but where people misunderstood each other. I can't for a minute believe when we're talking about health and public safety that Chief Clark would not be interested in these statistics. They are not necessarily relevant, but in an equation where you're trying to balance, a lot of pros and a lot of cons, that information would certainly be worth considering. I don't see how there could have been any confusion to that. The other thing I would like to point out is I do have a copy here of the town planner Craig Miner's memo with 30 or 35 suggestions for improvements to the physical, the material construction of the project. And again, I would just like to say, and I hear Mr. Hollister's comments that he has addressed, or that they have taken into consideration, or that they have accepted the bulk of them. But I think we should try to make it very clear that, in fact, I'm going to give this to you because what I have.
Take your own copy.
Okay, what I have underlined here or highlighted in yellow is the last information I was able to get from the town of suggestions that Mr. Miner made that either were not accommodated or were accommodated in very, very general terms. And I'll just use it might sound like a silly example, but please bear with me. Let's say all toilets to be energy efficient, dual flush type. It's one thing to say, yes, we will have dual flush typed energy efficient toilets, or to simply say, we will have energy efficient toilets. That's not the kind of answer that I would be looking for. So I would love to know, and I think this committee should know, again, I know you can't deny a permit on this basis. I'm not trying to suggest that, but I'm talking about relations between the developer and the town. I think it's important to know which one of these are, as I think I said earlier, which one of them are unequivocally accepted and which ones are just under consideration. And I hope that the committee and the developer, and through Mr. Hollister, would take those thoughts into consideration. And I thank you for the extra time.
Yep. All right, last chance. Anybody else want to rebut something?
John Bashan, 56 Maple Hill. So you heard it now, the litigation threat. It's an absolute act of desperation. The burden is supported wholly by the record. Let them face a judge and tell the judge that their profit is more important than the safety of the pedestrians they plan to put there and profit from. And I said before, it's not so much the safety of the rest of us. I'm concerned first about the safety of the people put in that situation. The need for affordable housing is not even the issue here. The fact that it has to outweigh that need is almost ironic because it's almost hypocritical, or it's not hypocritical, it's just odd to even compare it to that. We're actually putting them in harm's way. It's not about the outweighing that need for affordable housing. So again, I would never tell you how to vote, but I won't sit by and watch an applicant bully you or threaten you or try to, tell you how you're obligated to vote. I will just say, and play devil's advocate, I'll give you some reasons that you could justify approval. One is profitability for the developer. The second is an out or an exit strategy for the property owner who's sitting on a ticking environmental time bomb. Right now, the pollutants are stable, but that as more groundwater enters the site, the surface is continuously becoming more fragmented, and that pollutant will start to move, and it's going to move on to federal government property. You do not want to be holding the title to that land. I don't care if you have an LLC. The government will pierce that veil, if you will, with no trouble whatsoever, especially with a deep pockets owner like Stop and Shop. So I hear some mumbling behind me, but that's the fact of the matter. So those are the reasons that you can justify it. Again, the safety issue is the lowest common denominator and the first charge of this committee. So, thank you.
Okay, anybody else wishing to speak in rebuttal? Okay, since there's nobody else, commissioners? What would you like to do? Want to close this public hearing?
Do we actually have a choice?
Well,
So I'll move we close this public hearing.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Fox to close. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, so this is to close 2418, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we doing
And
both?
do you want to close
We're-
2418
it's-
and 2518? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay, both.
Both of them. Okay.
This is to close the 24-18 and 25-18, since we've been talking about them at the same time. Is that?
I think we can do that, because 25-18 may be dependent on how we decide on 24-18. But do we want to put this on the agenda for old business for tonight, or for the?
Yes. If that's.
Okay, I'll amend that, close the hearing and move it, and move the petition to old business for tonight.
Okay, motion was made by Commissioner Fox and seconded by Michael. If there's no other discussion or questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to close those two public hearings. I will turn this meeting over to our chairman to proceed.
Could the secretary please read the next application, 4318?
Petition 43-18, special permit, section 6.2.5, alcoholic beverages at 30B Fen Road. California Sushi, Hayes Kaufman, Newington Associates LLC, owner, Lawrence Shipman, 433 South Main Street, 319 West Hartford, Connecticut, contact.
See, the Attorney Shipman is here. Please present your case, Mr. Shipman.
Thank you, Commissioners. I am here on behalf of California Sushi Teppanyaki Grill. A couple months back, or I think it was July, we presented a text amendment which would allow for alcoholic beverages to be served in shopping centers containing more than 40,000 square feet without regard to the 1,500 foot distance between establishments. We are now coming forward, that text amendment was made, and we're now coming forward with a request for a special permit pursuant to that 6.6-.3 to request that. There'll be no changes to the interior or the exterior of the property. All it's going to entail is putting in a cooler. The permit that they'll be moving for is for beer and wine. It's not even a full liquor permit. And beyond that, shouldn't increase any traffic or circulation within the existing Stop and Shop plaza.
This, if the commission remembers, they were here before, and we approved the limitations, the distance limitations in the shopping centers. So this falls right into what we have already approved, and this is the first application that we're seeing under that new text amendment that the Shipmans had brought forth on behalf of the property owner. So, any questions for the attorney?
I don't have any questions.
No. Okay, seeing none, with public hearing, we'll ask the public for comments. You want to just sit down, Larry? So, anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing none, commissioners, would you like to do? I'd like to close and move it for action tonight.
Yeah, I'd like to move that the public hearing be closed and placed on old business for tonight.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we're going to move this to old business under the second item after Dakota. Want to read the next item of 4618, please.
Petition 46-18, special permit, section 6.2.5, freestanding sign at 80 Fen Road, Montana Knights, Fen Road, 80 LLC, owner Merle McKenzie, 1183 Killingworth Road, Higginham, Connecticut, contact.
The applicant here, please come forward and make your presentation.
It seems I'm always here after a very contentious battle. Last time was that dog thing at somebody's home, and I hope my presentation is a little bit easier to digest, and I'm looking to see if I can get approval tonight for a freestanding sign at my business, Montana Knights Axe Throwing. I apologize for the roughly drawn logo, but I have a picture of it if you need to see it on my phone. I can certainly make that available to you. I know there's a square footage allotment per our 90 linear foot of frontage on our building. My sign is well within that, even including the little sign above my door. So without further ado, I'm seeking your approval tonight.
Is the structure already up?
Framework is up.
Why would you put up the structure without approval from this commission?
Well,
Without
after-
knowing that you would get it approved?
Well,
It's
after
pretty
my-
presumptuous on your part to think that you could put up the structure and then come to us and ask us to approve it.
Well, I had a conversation with Craig, and based on my conversation with him, and I know that's not approval from the commission, I seemed pretty sure that there would be no objections based on our conversation. I was well within the stats of what is allowed for a
If
sign.
the commission decided that the location was not appropriate or there was sightline problems or something.
I would move it
had
for
to
you.
put it, yeah, we'd have to move it.
I would move it for you. And I was also subject to the availability of my builder at the time. I've had the rest of this sign ready to go for over 3 weeks now. I've not put it up because I knew I needed your permission.
Okay, we'll open it up for the public for this public hearing, so we'll open it up for the public.
Should I move?
Yeah, please. Anyone from the public wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone from the public wishing to speak against this application? Seeing none, Commissioner comments? Any comments on the sign, other than he put it up before he had approval? Commissioner Fox?
Well, I'm not too happy about that, but, if, with this, we can't tell whether, really whether it's in the sight line or not, number one. Number two, maybe I'm missing something. Can you go back, Craig?
Well, I'm scrolling over to, and it's, this is where the structure.
Oh, okay.
The frame is, so it's on the applicant's property, because this is the property boundary.
Okay. So there is no sightline problem?
Correct.
My other question is, maybe I'm missing something.
Yes, sir.
I see the framework and I see the sign itself. What's holding the sign up?
It's going to be secured by chains.
Okay. Is it going to be swinging?
No,
Be
we're
able
going
to
to have
swing?
chains going out the sides.
On all four sides?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
What did you use for calculations of the sign? When we look at this sign, we don't just take the inner 4 foot by 4 foot. We take the structure as part of
Well,
the sign. What did you use to figure your square
That
footage?
is not necessarily the information I received.
Considering the sign, Mr. Planner, just the center part, or?
Well, as I said in my memo, this is a little unusual. Certainly, the center part counts as signage, and as I said in my memo, in my opinion, it would be reasonable to consider at least some of the area of this wooden frame as signage, because it speaks to the rustic nature of the business. The way the red and white stripes of a KFC is identified with the KFC. So a red and white sign would be part of a KFC signage. So as I said in my memo, I think to some extent, this rough timber frame should be considered signage. I don't know if every square foot of it should be considered signage, but I think some of it should. And I realize I'm not giving you clear guidance. I'm really just raising an issue for you gentlemen to use your wisdom and come up with a reasonable answer, because this is kind of, it's not kind of unique. It's rather unusual, a situation like this.
You have 90 linear feet of frontage.
Well,
Yes,
but
sir.
that's not what signage is based on. It's not based on the frontage of the property. It's based on how wide the building is. And,
You said the building was 90 feet.
It's 90 feet wide.
oh,
The building itself?
Yeah.
oh, okay, because you said frontage before, so I want to make sure that you didn't
This
think.
is a whole new world for me. I feel like I'm speaking Russian and I don't know English yet.
Oh, no,
So the building width is 90 feet.
okay, good,
Okay,
good,
so-
right.
So we're allowed how many, it's 1 linear foot for each?
Right, 1 square foot for every linear foot.
So you got a two-sided sign, so you're allowed 45 square feet on each side. And what does this measure?
Well, if you took the whole thing, 7 by 13, it's 91 square feet on each side. If you did the whole thing, I mean, it's,
Okay, so what do you want to take, half of it? Still doesn't meet the, where do you draw the line? It's oversized sign for the, doesn't meet the requirements of the footage. Plus you have a sign already on the building, right?
4 by 5.
Okay. Gotta deduct that from it too.
it gives them 70 square feet left. Actually,
foot-
you know, Mr. Chairman?
This commission has to determine how much of the structure we're gonna, account for as signage, if at all.
Can I ask a question? What is the height of the sign? We don't
10
have it.
feet.
10 feet? That dimension's not on the plan. 16.
The structure, to me, if it was any other sign, it would be the base, and you wouldn't consider that signage.
Well, we've taken into consideration under other signs that we've done, we just don't take the lettering, we take the complete sign. We take the
area
outside
that-
of this, of the
the outside
sign,
of
we
the
don't just
sign.
say the letters and try to determine what the square footage is based on lettering or something, so. In the past, we've used that as in this case, part of the structure is part of the sign, that's part of the signage. Michael?
Yeah, refresh my memory, Mr. Chairman. When I agree, when we do calculate the square footage of a sign, the actual sign itself, okay? But here, here we have a sign and the framework. Now, I don't know, when we have a pylon sign where we have rectangle held up by such as in front of the Congregational Church there, I just need a little refreshing memory. Do we usually include the pylons?
No, wouldn't be
Okay.
wouldn't be considering the pylons here, but you'd be talking about at least the cross members and part of it as part of the sign. I mean, it's,
Well, if it helps anybody, I'm not necessarily fighting whether you not want to include part of that sign, unless and until it negates my ability to have that sign, then I'll have a different response. But if it moves things along and you want to count some of that sign, by all means, please do.
If you just took simple measurements of the 4 by 7, so it's 28 on each side, so it'd give you 56. He's got 20 feet on the building. He's still below the 90 square feet.
it's double-sided signs.
Yeah, so it's, but again, 7 by 4, right?
28 times
So
two,
7 feet across,
56 square feet, you got 90
and
linear
4 foot
feet,
high.
so.
Even if you went 5 foot high. It is a little bit unusual because there's so much open space in this. Usually,
Yeah,
it's connected, so it's, do you measure? And maybe the planner can chime in here, although maybe he doesn't want to chime in here.
If you took that calculation, you'd be under the,
Yeah,
you'd still, with the
Yeah.
deduction from this,
I mean, the unusual part, unfortunately, is that you went ahead and
And
put
I
up the-
apologize.
the sign first. That probably didn't win you any points here.
I'm sure.
Okay,
But I think, again, it meets the square footage. I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely not there's no sightline issues.
that's a consensus of the commission?
As far as I'm concerned, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the commission at this time?
So,
Once
make a
again,
motion to
you know,
Make a
close it.
motion to close and move it to old business.
Close and move to old business, second.
Okay.
Action tonight?
For action tonight, yes.
Okay, we're gonna move this to old business as the third item.
So I stay here for that?
If you want to stay and see if it gets approved,
Yes, sir.
or you could just call the planner tomorrow
Oh,
morning.
you know, that might be better. I've got an early morning. Craig, I'll call you in the morning.
Yeah, call
Thank you all
Craig.
for your consideration. Greatly appreciate it.
Be careful with those axes now.
Yeah, come on down. We're still looking for good people. All of you.
Okay, that ends the public portion of the agenda. We're going into new business, and the items under new business, A, B, and C, are related to 550 Cedar Street, and I'll turn it back over to the Vice Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Planner, do you have anything for us on this first one? What are we gonna, 18, okay. Could the Secretary read the petition 24-18, please?
How about 26-18? Just for kicks.
I was starting at A. Petition 24-18.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to the new business, 26, site plan. My apology.
Am I correct, Mr. Planner?
Well, we are.
Am I correct?
Isn't item A
Didn't we already move the A and B to old business?
to old business?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, so those are moved to old business, so, okay, I'm sorry. Petition 26-18, you want to read that, please?
Petition 26-18, site plan approval at 550 Cedar Street, Cedar Point, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, Section 8-30G, Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant Stop and Shop, LLC owner, Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut, contact.
Thank you. Mr. Town Planner, you have all three of these on here as new business. Could you explain our procedure going forward?
Well, I put them as new business because when I prepared the agenda, the hearing was still open, and I didn't know whether the commission was going to consider them old business or new business, so I just put them there as a place to put them. But since tonight you voted to move A and B to old business, then appropriate then, I guess, now to discuss item C, because A and B have been moved down the agenda to old business. Okay. But I'm not sure how important it is, really. The point is, this is now the point for you to discuss these three applications.
All right, so we're on petition 26-18, which is the site plan approval for 550 Cedar Street. The secretary read it, gives us an opportunity to talk about the site plan. If any commissioners have any anything they'd like to add before we move that down to old business and act on it afterwards.
I do have go ahead, Stan.
No, go ahead.
No, I do have a number of questions, but I don't know, if we should save it for discussion on the motion, or if you want to discuss it, either way.
So I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions when we bring up a motion or not. So if you want to save it for then, that's up to you.
Well, may as well get them all done at once then. No,
Commissioner Woods.
Unless somebody else has.
Just, I guess there are more comments, and coming off of Attorney Hollister's comments tonight, and referring to the bus stop. Actually, I think I brought up the bus stop being cut out at our last meeting. but it was clearly not for Newington Children's School Bus. It would have been for Connecticut Transit Bus. I would agree with their findings that it is way too dangerous to pull the bus off of that, but I think it still would be, excuse me, a good idea to pursue conversations with Connecticut Transit to possibly get a bus stop there. I am happy that they have at least started negotiations, and it looks like it's moving in a positive direction for sidewalks on the complex heading to the west. I am concerned still about pedestrian safety. I'm struggling because I don't think there is a safe way to walk on that road. And I think if this project goes through, people are going to walk on the road. I think there's going to be some pedestrian traffic. If the sidewalk goes in, and there's no assurances tonight that that will happen, it's moving in the right direction. The sidewalk should be in place as long as all the stars align between Connecticut DOT, the town of Newington, and Dakota, although Dakota's pretty much put their cards on the table. They put up a substantial amount of money. If you do quick math, it's about 6,000 square feet. It's about $43, $44 a square foot. So that's real money. You could build the sidewalk for that kind of money, not knowing what DOT's requirements would be for them to accomplish that. But I'm still struggling as a commissioner here on, there isn't a pedestrian, well, there isn't as large of a pedestrian issue there right now. I guess there could be people that walk on that street. I have no control over that right now. But as sitting on this commission, I will be making a decision whether more people are going to be there. And it is my belief that the people, there will be a fair number of people there that will be looking for public transportation, and I just don't see a way for them getting to that safely. And that's what I'm struggling with. And
I think moving the applicant trying to move the bus stop from, I think they stop at Alumni or something, to move it closer to, their in front of their property, maybe in front of where the kids are going to be dropped on and off. That would be something I think that they should work with the DOT, and then hopefully something works on the sidewalks. Commissioner Camello, you had your hands up?
We're talking about sidewalks and people walking, and if you walk towards the center of town, Cedar
Use the
and Main,
microphone, please.
Cedar and Main, there's the same distance between the curb and the sidewalk and the road as Cedar and Main as you're talking here. That's something to think about.
Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Acting Chairman. Like Commissioner Woods, I am heartened by the fact that the applicant has agreed to, quote unquote, work with the state regarding the sidewalks, at least in one direction. I'm of the feeling that same feeling that Commissioner Woods is, that unless there are sidewalks, proper sidewalks put on there, there is no safe way to go from 550 Cedar Street to either 721 Cedar Street, which is where the sidewalks are supposed to be in, or to Alumni Road without sidewalks. And the one problem I have with the applicant's program, so to speak, is that the idea is that they're going to try to work with the DOT. We don't know how that's going to come out, and I could not make a decision on this unless I knew we were going to have sidewalks there. And so, I think if unless you want to go over up to another issue here, I think that's my feeling on the sidewalks.
Commissioner
so
Woods?
far.
Yes, I'm also.
One second.
No, go ahead. Let him go.
Go ahead.
I'm also having trouble with the sidewalk issue. I know there's going to be people walking. They're not going to be able to afford to take a lift, all right, because it's affordable housing we're looking at. We're going to have kids in that area. Kids are going to have a tendency to walk. I don't care what you tell me. I don't care if you put 30-foot high fences. They're going to still walk on that side of the road, whether or not there's sidewalks there. That rail down there is going to be an attractive thing to look at for the kids. They're going to want to get down there. They're going to want to see the trains go by. I know when I was a kid, growing up in the Francis Avenue area, kids used to be down the rail lines all the time. So that's another issue, a smaller issue, but again, my biggest issue is the pedestrian safety. And as Commissioner Camello pointed out, there is a small section of sidewalk in the center of town, Cedar at Main, it's right up against the roadway. The rest of the sidewalk, if you look, you'll see there's a 3-foot forgiveness area of grass in there to install signage and stuff like that. The difference between the speed limit on Cedar Street at Main Street is 35 miles an hour. We're talking 40 to, it's posted 40, let's put it that way. Nobody does 40 through there, they're doing 50. So it's almost the same speed as the Berlin Turnpike, basically. So again, I have an issue with the sidewalks. I'd like to see a better commitment on this, you know, and plus the fact now it's going to be an additional burden to the town of Newington to plow, maintain. I can't imagine somebody walking on a sidewalk slipping and falling into the middle of the road because we're going to be right up against the road. So these are my concerns. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around the fact that anybody is going to have to walk to get down to that busway. I mean, it's just in my opinion, it's an unsafe condition. Thank you.
Commissioner Woods?
Yeah, I didn't mention this the first time, and I should have. I forgot. And in all respect to the applicant, because he did put it on the record, and I think he has a valid point, that the police department reviewed this, and they didn't cite this as an issue. So I think that's a valid point. I think that needs to be put on the table. And I mean, the fire, I don't think that would be the fire's issue. I don't think they would be looking at it from that aspect, but I think the police would probably look into that. And I find it a little unusual, I guess, to me, that wasn't a concern, but nonetheless, that's a fact,
Yeah.
that they didn't bring it up.
Now, Commissioner Woods, I have a question for you. One of the other commissioners suggested that sidewalks in both directions were your concern. Is that accurate, or are you more concerned going towards the busway than towards the town center? If you could clarify that.
Yeah, I would love to see him go both ways. Although I think the further we bring people east, the more trouble we're going to get into because we can't get to the town center. That's not possible. That's been going on back to Dominic Mazzacoli's days, and he failed at it. I would love to see that happen. For me, my concession was if they could get it from Cedar Point to the busway, that gives people, I believe now, safe access. Is it perfect? No. Is it the sidewalk a little bit closer to the street than I'd like? Yes, but I mean, that's a reality. At least there is provisions to get a sidewalk in there, and I think the applicant has done some due diligence in the last 2 weeks to try to make that happen with DOT. For them to even be to the point where they can bring us that DOT is considering it is pretty much a milestone, I would think, that there is that sort of a commitment that quick. Because I think DOT recognizes that it's an issue. And especially now if they're talking about this rail station at the old Atlantic Tool site, there's going to be people walking on that street. And that's not this applicant's concern, but the people that are going to be living there are my concern right now. And I'm struggling with it. I don't really have a problem with the text amendment and the zoning map amendment. I really don't. And I think Attorney Hollister has actually spoke to those. There were some concerns to the commissioners to my right, and he basically said to just strike those part of the regulations that he wrote in his text amendment, and he can live with it.
So we're going to get into those in detail afterwards under old business.
Okay.
If there's anything else on the site plan? Yes, Commissioner
Just
Fox.
real quick, Mr. Acting Chairman. I have been advocating sidewalks in both ways, but listening to Commissioner Woods, as far as safety and necessity is concerned, I would kind of be not as interested in sidewalks going down Alumni Road, which, but people will need, that are using public transportation, as Steve said, really going to need sidewalks to get the CT Fast Track to Stop and Shop. And in the future, I know you said that, we shouldn't plan on it because we really don't know if we're going to have a Hartford rail station there. But, I've been always of the opinion or have thought that, we need to plan for the future. If it's even a thought that, plans should be made for safe access to the station from 550 Cedar Street. And I think I'd have to think about that and talk about that a little more before I, think about a decision.
You want to expand on that a little?
I don't know what there's to expand, expand that. Let's assume, I don't know what happens when you assume, but, that we are going to have a Hartford rail station there. Those that are using it, those that are living at Cedar Point and want to use the rail station, they're going to have to get across Cedar Street.
At the light?
At the light? Okay, at the light. But are we going to have now across a walk signal there and possibly holding up traffic a little more?
Well, that would be something that if it does go in, that would be a discussion at the time. I mean, you're asking us to assume that the train station's going in, and are you asking us to make changes to this plan based on that, or are you just bringing it up for concern?
Yeah, now bringing up a concern, and yes, I'm asking for. I don't know whether it'd be a problem for something for Dakota Partners to do to get started, or Hartford Rail to provide access, whether it's at a traffic light or with an overpass or whatever. But I really can't see just putting this development in that 550 Cedar Street and not thinking about getting people safely across. And I really don't think a crosswalk signal there would really be the safest way to go.
I have to, you're asking us to assume that that's going to come in.
Yes, I am.
I don't know if that's appropriate, because if it did come in front of us, we would look at those safety aspects and we would make the developer of that site provide safe access across the street. We would make them do the safe access. But, that's a whole nother topic. I mean, we were looking at the train station over at the Willard Avenue area, and out of the blue, some leaders felt that it should be at the Cedar Street. And if you do put that in, that becomes a major commuter lot, basically pulling off 300 plus cars or bringing more cars in to get to the train stop. And then you're probably going to put up 3 buildings or more of probably housing. They may say it's mixed use, but I don't see any retail going over there. I see more affordable housing. This is also an industrial property, which we have stated that we don't want to lose our industrial property. So, I mean, that's a whole nother topic that I think that would be for a discussion at a later time if it comes in front of us. Commissioner Woods?
I actually have a question for the planner, back again to my concern about safety and the sidewalks. Mr. Planner, is it a valid concern? Is it something that I need to really weigh on? Or will the court look at this and no, it's not a concern to the developer, and that shouldn't enter into my decision? With 8-30, it's a little bit different. So,
well, 8-30 does use the phrase substantial. You have to find that there's a substantial, a substantial risk to public health, safety, and welfare, such that it outweighs the need for affordable housing. I think it's reasonable if this commission wanted to come to the conclusion that the lack of a sidewalk constitutes a substantial, risk to public safety. Attorney Hollister said that, I guess in his experience, that does not rise to the level of substantial sufficient to withstand a challenge to the courts. I have no experience with an affordable housing project. I don't know. But I think it's reasonable that if you feel that this lack of a sidewalk represents a substantial risk to public safety, then you would then vote accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there anything else from the commissioners concerning the site plan? We'll move that over to old business, if it's all right. Okay, so in old business, we have 2418, 2518, and 2618. I'll turn this meeting back over to the chairman now.
Brings us to item D, Newington Ridge Preserve. Is there anyone from the homeowners association here?
I think you're looking at the original agenda. Right. The revised agenda has the motor vehicle regulation as the next item. Yep.
Item D, 4718, you want to read that into the minutes, please?
47-18, zoning text amendment, motor vehicle regulations, town planning and zoning commission applicant.
Mr. Planner.
So this is on the agenda for the commission to begin discussing.
Chairman, excuse me, Mr. Planner. As the commissioners are aware, that there was a letter in there asking me to recuse myself. I think that I disagree with a lot of things that are on the letter, and the town attorney at our previous meeting gave me, if I'm not mistaken, said that it was okay to sit on this. But I don't want to cloud the zoning, the fixing of the regulations for the automotive. So I'm going to recuse myself from this petition, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so,
I was going to ask that we postpone this, we table this for now. I think we've got a busy night, so before you leave the room, do you really want to get into this now? I think, or put it towards the end of the meeting if we have time, come back to it? That's my.
I agree.
I agree.
it's really not that problem. We could put it on for the next, let's put it on for the next meeting and put it up closer to the beginning of the meeting.
I don't want to say it's not important, but I think
No,
we have.
it's important,
yeah.
and it's, but I hear your concerns, and I agree with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're okay with that, Mike?
Yes, I
Stan?
am.
Yep.
Aye. Okay, so we'll table that item. It's a commission-generated applications and amendments, so we could do what we want with it. So we'll just put it off for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is Newington Preserve.
Right, okay, I am relieved to report to the commission that as of this afternoon, based on conversations between the developer and the town engineer and myself, the applicant has agreed to remove 12 inches of the existing unacceptable base material, replace it with the proper type of material, and then pave it as required by the site plan. And he is prepared to do that shortly. I mean, maybe even beginning this week.
Okay, so and the homeowners association is okay with all these decisions?
Right, because that gives them the product that they were promised in the first place.
And this is gonna be done before they close the asphalt plants?
I would presume.
So they'll have a good road for the winter?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that ends the new business portion of the agenda. Have approval of minutes, the minutes of October 10th.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approve. We get into the next item is old business. And these are the 2418, 2518, and 2618 are the Dakota items. But we've also moved to old business,
You want to
two other items. You want to
handle the other two items first?
Yeah, please.
Petition 46-18.
40,
Hold on, we're
no.
missing two guys.
4318, which is the special permit for alcohol at the California Sushi. You have
No, I don't have draft motions for these.
make a, can you do a motion with no conditions?
Mr. Chairman, I propose to make a motion for petition 43-18. I move that we approve petition 43-18, special permit, section 6.2.5, alcoholic beverages at 30B Fenn Road, California Sushi, Hayes Kaufman, Newington Associates, LLC, owner Lawrence Shipman, 433 South Main Street, 319 West Hartford, Connecticut. Contact, no conditions.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments from the commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so you'll, I'm sure that Larry Shipman will be calling you tomorrow for. Next item is, item D, 4618 for the sign. Do you have something for that?
No, I wasn't.
Make a motion, no conditions.
Petition 46-18. I move that we approve petition 46-18, special permit, section 6.2.5, freestanding sign at 80 Fenn Road, Montana Knights Fenn Road, 80 LLC, owner Merle McKenzie, 1183 Killingworth Road, Hickam, Connecticut. Contact, with the findings that the sign will occupy X amount of square feet. What was the square footage that we talked about?
56 and 20, 76 square feet.
76 square feet.
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments or from the commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that's approved. I'll turn it back over to the vice chairman for the 55 Cedar Street applications.
Okay, if I could have the secretary read the first petition, petition 24-18.
Petition 24-18, zoning text amendment. New section 3.26, Workforce Assisted Housing District, Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut. Contact. I move to deny petition 24-18, zoning text amendment, new section 3.26, Workforce Assisted Housing District, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, section 8-30G. Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut. Contact. Findings. 1. Affordable housing options. The Newington zoning regulations currently provide for the creation of 2 types of affordable housing. Affordable age-restricted housing for seniors, section 3.7.2, and single-family entry-level housing, section 3.7.4. Both of these housing options are currently allowed on Cedar Street. The proposed regulation does not make any significant addition to the range of affordable housing options in Newington. Second, apartment size. The maximum number of bedrooms allowed in a WAH development is only 2. A 2-bedroom apartment does not meet the needs of a family with 2 or more children of the opposite sex, nor a medium-sized family in general. 3, by right, the proposed regulation make a WAH development by right in a WAH zone which prevents the TPZ from being able to mandate changes to site plan that the commission may feel are necessary to mitigate the impact of a WAH development on surrounding neighborhood. 4, level of quality. The regulations do not specify any minimal level of quality for the construction materials used in the amenities contained in each apartment. 5, consistency with the POCD per section 8-3A of Connecticut General Statutes. This statute states that the TPZ must make a finding of consistency between a proposed zoning amendment and the town's plan of conservation and development. The proposed regulation does not address any of the residential development strategies listed on page 34. Housing opportunity diversity. 11, encourage the provision of naturally occurring affordable housing units which may not be deed restricted but which meet the market criteria for purchase or rent by low and moderate income families in Newington. 12, expand the supply of affordable housing for the elderly by development of sites near the town center. 13, continue to assess the special housing needs of the growing elderly population. 14, use incentive housing zone special exception criteria to increase the affordable housing for the elderly, persons with disabilities, and veterans, and provide supportive services for the population groups.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded. I didn't think you were going to read a motion right into it completely, but we do have 2 motions on the table here. We have one that the commissioner has just read, and then we also have a motion to approve with different conditions. I'll open it up to the commissioners for discussion on the motion that is on the table right now, on whether or not this is something that you want to bring forward. Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes, you know, it's been this commission's policy to try to write our own text amendments. No offense to Attorney Hollister, but I think this commission should write its own text amendments for WAHD housing. Okay, we've done that in the past, and that's the way I think we should still move forward with that. I know it's time is probably going to run out for Attorney Hollister's client, but I have, like I said earlier, I had several issues with the 3.3 and 3.44 with the home occupancy businesses. I'd like to know what type of businesses they wanted to put in. You know, and how is this going to be monitored? Okay, I had an issue with the height of the buildings. I mean, 35 feet is what we have. I think we should maintain that. As far as the provision with the last one, even though Attorney House said they'd modify it, that, you know, no area in town should be exempt from zoning. I don't care who they are or what they are. Okay, if we allow this, then any other group that can come in and wants to develop is going to say, well, we're going to put the same type of thing in, and they're going to point back to this. So I think we should write our own regulations and move forward from there. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Didn't Attorney Hollister he addressed those comments, didn't he, earlier? Both you and Commissioner Fox had on those. If somebody has a home occupation business, they have to come to this board.
But the question, excuse me, Vice Chairman Payne, but the question was, this regulation would supersede all of ours. That's what was put in to change it now, and we'll make the change. We've already closed this. Now we're discussing it. Am I correct, or am I off base?
We're discussing it, yes.
Okay.
And
So this was my issue that I had. We had discussed it. Attorney Hollister says, well, we could strike this out, strike that out. I want to go over and review the entire text. We really haven't discussed the entire thing. We got 31 sections or subsections in this here that we should be looked at. That's my position.
And as a commission, if we don't agree with some of these things and you want to strike certain things out, then we have the right to do that. If, for instance, those items that you talked about, if you want to make corrections on that, we can make corrections on that. We can approve this with conditions, or we can deny this with conditions. So I mean, if you want to go through the text amendment and talk about the areas that you're concerned with, we can do that.
I want to review the entire text amendment, and I think that's what we should be doing.
Okay, Commissioner Woods?
In all due respect to Commissioner Sobieski, I don't agree. I think that's why workforce assistant housing in 8-30 was put in place, because commissions like this don't do it. So I don't have a problem. Attorney Hollister was clear that the issues that my two fellow commissioners brought up, that they would be able to strike. I am not against workforce housing in this community at all. And although this petition, this motion that's on the table is obviously going to strike this down, but I will not support.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, I am not going to support the motion that's on the table right now to deny it.
All right, Commissioner Woods, thank you. I have to agree with you. I think that the applicant's done quite a bit of work to try to satisfy us on every aspect, and we can make corrections to the text amendment. He said that we could strike certain things out. We can do that. We could go through it right now if the commission wants to do that. If your heart is set on killing this project, then I don't know where everybody's coming from here. Commissioner Fox.
All right, I appreciate Commissioner Wood's comments and your comments, acting chair. But I don't know if it's really necessary to go through the entire text amendment, because I've already gone through a number of them. And as you know, I think when we vote whether to yes or no to deny, we have something like 5 findings here, and you know, going through the findings, I happen to agree that these housing are currently allowed on Cedar Street. Proposed regulation does not make any significant addition to the range of affordable housing options in Newington, so we don't need it. I agree with the finding that a 2-bedroom apartment does not meet the needs of a family with 2 opposite-sex children. I don't think that a WAH development or any development should be by right, and that I don't think there should be a zone, in this case the WAHD zone, that would prevent the TPZ from being able to mandate any changes to a site plan. The level of quality, and I'm also kind of agreeing with the consistency with POCD findings. While it doesn't go against or contradict anything in our excuse me, plan of conservation and development, it does kind of does not address a certain number of the strategies on page 34 of our plan and development. You guys can read it as well as I can, and so I would go. I would vote for denying it. I would vote yes on this.
Any other commissioners? Commissioner Braverman?
I have a concern that's a little bit different, and it deals with the fact that you're taking low and moderate income people and putting them into a converted industrial zone, making it residential. And when you take the industrial zone that's been deemed to have pollution and hazardous waste in that area, I just feel concerned that people will be exposed to that level of pollution, no matter what they're saying about trying to remediate. And why put that population at risk?
This is in an industrial zone, okay? So you know, this is in a PD zone.
Okay.
Okay, a planned development zone which allows housing. So
Well,
PD zone allows housing. Okay?
Well-
Planned development zone allows housing. This is not industrial property. I understand you're probably referencing the industrial waste, I believe. And they have stated for the record that they are going to comply with all DEEP's regulations on making this a safe site for residential use. You realize that, right?
I realize that, I just don't want another Love Canal.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Kamali, you have anything?
Just procedurally, I have one question.
Yes.
If this gets voted down, that's it, it's over?
Well-
Or can the other motion get taken up? It's
Well, I would recommend,
a
if,
little bit strange.
right, if the motion to deny the text amendment passes, I would still recommend you go through the other two applications and approve or deny them on their merits, because if your decision to deny the text amendment is for some reason overturned in court, then you'd have nothing to uphold your decision to deny the map amendment and the site plan. So I would still recommend you go forward and act thoughtfully on the other two applications, regardless of how you vote on this one.
Then I'm assuming you'll do a roll call vote, Mr. Chairman?
Could the planner reiterate to the commissioners the procedures, a little bit more about the 830? Let's make it all clear for everybody on the 830 and the workforce housing, as far as what we're allowed and what we're not allowed, please.
Well, okay, well, yeah, in a nutshell, the requirement on the commission is to approve the application unless you find that there's a substantial, that the application presents a substantial impact on public health, safety, and welfare in Newington, to the extent that it outweighs the need for affordable housing in Newington. So that's the balancing act that you need to make in your minds.
And what about the text amendment? What kind of,
Could you make changes to it?
we can make changes,
Well,
correct?
I know that you can make changes to a conventional text amendment application, and I know, yes, you are allowed to make changes to an affordable housing application if the changes to it are what you need to do to be able to see your way clear to voting to approve it.
Commissioners, yes, Commissioner Woods.
I don't mind doing that exercise, but I don't think we're at that point. I think, just do the simple math around this table, that this is not going to pass. This is going down. So we could do that, but I don't know where we get it. There's some commissioners that have expressed a much deeper concern than the text amendment issues here, so.
And I think the commission should discuss them when we get to those next, the second and the third items.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other commissioners, do you, yes or no, do you want to attempt to make some changes to the text amendment to satisfy your concerns? Mike, no. Commissioner Fox?
I don't see where any modification of the text amendment would actually assuage any of my concern. These findings kind of go along with everything I'm thinking of. The only finding I would add a finding to this, and that would be something to the effect that the safety and health, as mentioned by Commissioner Braverman, because of the pollution, safety and health of any residents or workers that would be on this site would be in jeopardy.
That wouldn't fall under a text amendment. That would be under another, or, you know.
Well, would that, okay.
Okay, that, maybe that might be something, your concern for one of the other applications, but not for a text amendment, Mr. Fox. Commissioner
Well,
Woods.
Yeah, I think I misunderstood what you were saying, and I'm definitely in favor of working towards, because I think what you're talking about is we can get to an agreement between us that we can pass this motion will then go away, and we get a motion on the table. That I'm in favor of. So if we could do that, I'm all in favor of that.
Okay, Commissioner Fox, you still don't want to make an attempt to correct any of the text amendment, is that correct?
I really don't think it's
Just the text amendment.
I don't know. Right now, I don't know if I can vote to. I can. Why I would not move to deny this petition, even because I don't see any chance of modifying any the text amendments to the point where I would be satisfied with it.
You don't feel there's anything you can do to modify this text amendment to satisfy having workforce housing zone, is that correct?
At this point, I don't, no.
Okay, Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, I'm in agreement with Commissioner Fox. There's just too many things here that I have questions with, and I really want to sit down and look at this real close, and I don't think we're going to be able to get it done tonight. So at this point, I cannot support this. But I also want to just make one thing, though. I do think the town does need affordable housing, but I want to make sure we're going to get the right housing with the right mixture, and everybody is safe here.
In the right place.
And in the right place.
Well, the safety falls under another section. Safety falls under another section.
I understand that,
This
Vice
is just
Chairman.
about the text amendment.
That would be zone change, yeah. I
understand.
Commissioner Camello, you have anything?
No.
You're not in favor of looking at the text amendment, is that correct?
Just leave it like this.
Commissioner Braverman?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't thought about it. I mean, I can't pick either one.
Well, we have a text amendment in front of us that we can either attempt to modify to satisfy your concerns or not. And it's obvious that you're not interested in modifying the text amendment. I have that correct?
Oh, well, I don't know if the terms are correct. It's not that I'm not, I see no, what word am I using? I see no purpose because there's so many changes, and the applicant's attorney, has already, felt like he was going to modify this and modify that, but I don't see any reason to go any further into it. And I mean, Commissioner Sobieski brought up another point. I would really like to, and this is another thing. I don't think we'll get the chance. I would like to think about this, go through them a little more often. And I know the applicant needs to make a deadline. And I don't know, maybe can agree to a special meeting before the 31st, which would be, which would have to be maybe on Monday or something like that.
With all due respect, Mr. Fox, we've had this on the agenda for so many months.
We have, and I think I have mentioned this before. I think Commissioner Sobieski has. That throughout the whole process, from the first meeting on till now, I don't know. I have felt very frustrated, in the proceedings, and while Attorney Hollister has presented his case very well and has been kind of expert in quote unquote explaining. And telling us that he's agreed to this, he's agreed to that, when he hasn't really. So, I mean, I could go along, I personally could use, another meeting to discuss this, because like I say, I personally have been frustrated, from the first meeting on, because I really can't see this being, this development on this particular site. It's
Thank you.
just,
Commissioner Camello.
to me, it's just too dangerous all around.
Call a vote.
You're really gonna,
Just
really? All right, you're gonna call a vote? All right.
Again, if we're going to do that, then there's a motion to call the vote, which he made. Then there has to be a vote on calling the vote before we.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please, with the chairman last on calling the vote?
Commissioner Fox?
To call the vote, yes.
Commissioner Woods?
No.
Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes.
Commissioner Camillo?
yes.
Commissioner Braverman?
Yes.
Commissioner Payne?
No. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We've discussed it. Call a roll call vote, please, with chairman last.
Commissioner Fox?
Are we voting now to, whether or not to deny?
That's the motion on the floor, yes.
Aye.
Commissioner Woods?
No.
Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes.
Commissioner Camillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Braverman?
Yes.
Commissioner Payne?
No. Okay, the next thing.
Would you call the tally and so that we can record whether this motion was passed or not?
You need a tally?
No, I mean, yeah.
1, 2, 3, what do you have, 4-2? It's denied 4-2. Does that help you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda, if you could read just the petition 25-18, please, next, not a motion.
Petition 25-18, zoning map amendment, WAHD at 550 Cedar Street, Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant 550 Cedar Street, Associates LLC, owner Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut, contact.
Okay, you guys want to discuss this now? Or do you want to put a motion up on the table immediately?
Yeah. Well, the only thing I can say is since we did deny the text amendment, it's kind of moot. Yeah, I'll call the vote.
Second.
No, you need a motion.
Yeah.
Huh?
You need a motion. There's no motion. on-
Move to call the vote.
There's no motion to be voted.
You need to read the whole motion. The motion hasn't been read yet.
No, I'm sorry. I thought it was.
If a commissioner wants to read a motion, they can read a motion.
Okay, just a question before.
Yep.
I see a motion in front of me to deny, but I thought there was a motion for denial and approval. I
There
don't
is.
have
For
one for
draft
approval.
motions for both.
I see one for denying 2518, but I don't see anything for
Should be in
approval.
the,
Yeah, it's a separate,
Oh, it's a separate package?
yes.
Ah,
they were next to each other.
maybe I didn't get
Go
two
ahead and read it.
packages.
I move to deny petition 25-18, zoning map amendment, WAHD at 550 Cedar Street in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, Section 8-30G, Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant 550 Cedar Street, Associates LLC, owner Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut, contact. Findings. 1. Workforce-assisted housing development regulations. The parcel is not suitable for a WAH development due to the absence of a sidewalk on Cedar Street between the parcel and the Connecticut Fast Track on Fen Road. The applicant has not included such a sidewalk in their site plans for 550 Cedar Street. So if approved, residents of WAD development on the property would not be able to walk safely to Connecticut Fast Track Station. 2, Hartford Line. The immediate proximity of the Hartford Line high-speed rail tracks makes the location unsafe for families with children. 3, school bus access. Cedar Street is a 4-lane minor artery road carrying a substantial amount of traffic at relatively high speeds. According to the data submitted to the applicants, residence project of this type contain an average of 0.46 children per apartment in grades K through 12. If all 108 apartments occupied, nearly 50 school children will reside here. It is reasonable to assume that several school buses will stop here twice a day, the presence of an unacceptable safety concern. 4, consistency of POCD per Section 8-3A of Connecticut General Statutes. The statute states that the TPZ must a finding of consistency between a proposed zoning boundary change and the town's plan of conservation and development. The proposed amendment does not conflict with the POCD, but neither does it address any of the residential development strategies listed on page 34.
Second.
Okay, motion has been read and it's seconded. It's open for discussion right now.
Mr. Vice Chairman?
Yes.
Paragraph 3, Cedar Street is a 4-lane. It should be major, not minor arterial. Craig?
I took that from the POCD, but if it's
It
changed
is major.
since then, okay.
Because it's got 34,000 vehicles.
Yeah, I think he's saying what the POCD calls for. Okay, you're right.
Anything else from commissioners?
Just,
Commissioner
again, I'm
Woods?
not going to support this motion. Again, I'm in favor of the workforce housing, and I might not be totally thrilled about where it's being built, but I think the town needs it, and I think this developer has done everything in his power to try to meet the needs of this commission.
I think you're absolutely correct. And by state law, I don't know if we have the enough information to deny this. Commissioner Fox.
Well, that's what I've been trying to say. I don't know if there's enough information, but given what I have, one of the parameters that our town planner has mentioned that in order, one of the things that we need according to 8-30G is, trying to proving or maintaining that health and safety hazards overcome the need for affordable housing, and I think it does. So I'll be in favor of denying.
Any other comments? Commissioner Braverman.
I think it's very important for us to have affordable housing. It really is, and I think it's critical for our town. However, I think there's enough against it from my perspective. I'm sorry if I disagree with a lot of other people, but I find that the traffic, I find that the sidewalks, I find that the potential for pollution is much stronger in my perspective. Therefore, I can't support, I'm not in favor of the project.
Okay, Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, again, my major concern is the traffic and the pedestrian safety. But also, the rail line is going to be attractive to kids, okay? And you know that as well as everybody else has ever had kids. You can tell them to stay away, and you can put fencing up. They'll always find a way to get down there. I am not against affordable housing. I think the town needs some, but this is not the spot for it. So again, my concern here is the safety of the pedestrians, the kids, and the traffic. So therefore, I'll be voting against this.
In the future, should we be concerned and not allow any housing next to the railroad? I mean, we have a lot of housing next to the railroad.
I understand that, Commissioner, but what I'm saying is that what's there presently, okay, you're not going to be able to change. I'm saying that even though they said they're going to put a fence up there, and you know as well as I do, kids have a way of getting around things. We're not talking half a mile, quarter mile, eighth of a mile away. We're talking right next to it. So it's just a concern. It's not as important to me as the traffic and a pedestrian, but the rail is of concern to me.
I understand that, but we have lots of residential houses abutting the train tracks without fences, some of them.
Correct.
So I
And
just want to state
said
that for the record.
that's an existing condition. This is new. That's all I'm saying.
Any other commissioner comments? Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Woods?
No.
Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes.
Commissioner Camillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Braverman?
Yes.
Chairman Payne?
No. Okay, that application is denied. 2618 is just a site plan. We don't vote on that. Is that correct?
Oh, no, you do vote.
We vote on that?
Absolutely. Right.
Do you have a motion for that?
Yes, it's in the packet here. Yeah.
Okay, if somebody could read the motion for 26-18.
26-18, site plan approval at 550 Cedar Street, Cedar Point, Dakota Partners, Inc. Applicant Stop and Shop LLC owner Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut. Contact. I move to deny petition 26-18, site plan approval at 550 Cedar Street, Cedar Point, in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Section 8-30G, Dakota Partners, Inc. Applicant Stop and Shop LLC owner Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut. Contact. Findings. 1. Traffic hazard on existing streets. Section 5.3.3 reads as follows. In reviewing the site plans, the Commission shall consider the following as well as the conditions and standards herein. Applicants should also refer to Section 7.4, Design Standard and Site Plan Checklist. 2. Traffic circulation within the site, amount, location, and access to parking, traffic generated, and possible traffic hazard or circulation problems on existing or proposed drives or streets. Emphasis added. The applicants have not proposed to construct a sidewalk from 550 Cedar Street to Fast Track Station on Fenn Road. The absence of such a sidewalk presents an unacceptable traffic hazard, as workforce housing is a must be assumed that many of the Cedar Point residents will want to use the fast track to get to work. The lack of sidewalks will not deter those who do not have access to a car for attempting to walk to the fast track station on Fenn Road at great risk of injury. Also, Cedar Street is a 4-lane minor artery road carrying a substantial amount of traffic at relatively high speeds. According to data submitted by the applicants, residential projects of this type contain an average of 4.46 children per apartment in grades K through 12. If all 108 apartments are occupied, nearly 50 school children will reside here. It is reasonable to assume that several school buses will stop here twice a day, the presence of unacceptable traffic hazard.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Woods.
After, in traffic hazard 2, the next paragraph, the applicants have not proposed to construct the sidewalk from 550 Cedar Street to get a fast track. They basically have proposed that tonight, so I would think we should strike that from the motion if in fact you want to. I'm not going to support the motion, but I don't know if you want to give them any more fuel.
Well, let me speak as the author of that sentence.
Okay.
I used the word, and I wrote this after receiving information that the applicants were interested and willing to work with DOT and were willing to fund up to $260,000 to do it. But still, their application, they're not proposing to do it. They have suggested how it could happen, but they are not proposing to do it themselves, and that's why I chose that word. But I certainly have no pride of authorship. If you want to change it, that's fine. But that's why I used the word that I used.
Again, I guess maybe in the exact definition, I would agree with they're not going to construct it, but they've pretty much committed to put the money up to construct it. Again, I don't think it should be there, but again, I'm not going to support the motion, so.
You know, it's obvious that this commission didn't give the applicant an opportunity to set things in conditions for approval. They were going to fix the sidewalk area. They had stated that for the record. We could have made the sidewalks a condition of this proposal. We could make, we could have made several things a condition of the proposal for approval, but that's obviously not the road you wanted to go. So if there's no other comments, we'll call for a roll call vote.
Yes, I would like to make a comment, Acting Commissioner. Number one, as far as the proposed sidewalk is concerned, I would say technically, and Attorney Hollister has said that, and as the town planner has just said, that they would work with the DOT to put a sidewalk in, but there you have too many different things to consider there, and we cannot presume that actually is going to happen. So again, I can't I can't approve this this site plan, without knowing whether we're going to whether they're going to have sidewalks or not. And I think through all the meetings, I think we did give give the applicant a chance to modify. He didn't, he didn't not. I don't think he actually did agree to even a majority of the proposals that the town plan had put forward. He either didn't agree with it, or he just kept things as they were. So I think we gave him a chance, and that's why I am voting to deny.
In the motion to approve, there was a condition that maybe Commissioner Woods would read it for me, since I gave him my copy. There is a motion there that would have
in the draft motion.
In the draft motion for approval, there was a motion that there was a condition that directly talked about sidewalks. Do you have that, Commissioner Woods?
I'm looking for it right now. The applicant will submit a revised plan showing a continuous sidewalk along the north side of Cedar Street from the project site to the driveway at 712 Cedar Street.
So that would have taken care of the problems that you were talking about, Commissioner
No, I don't
Fox.
think it would have. They're submitting a plan, and just like when, as Matt, you even said it yourself a while ago, just like when we were talking about construction side by side with the remediation. Okay, they're proposing to do one thing, but you and I both have suggested that we would not want anything, any approval, until the site plan is remediated, and they, made the plans, but who knows if that's going to happen? I have to be sure in my own heart, my own mind, that whatever Attorney Hollister, the applicant, has attempted to do is going to come to fruition. Otherwise, we don't know what's going to happen. We could be putting these 0.46 children per unit, and these site workers, their parents, in jeopardy. And when it comes down to that, I would rather deny this petition and have the applicant, which they probably will do, appeal. And let the court decide. Because I really don't want the town to be liable for any children getting any cancer or getting hurt hurt because they had to walk on Cedar Street without sidewalks, and that's why I'm denying it. If they're going to appeal it, let the state make the make the decision. Thank you.
Commissioner Sobieski?
Two things. Number one, the $260,000 I thought was from sidewalks from their property up to Alumni. There is no money committed.
No, they were offering to contribute $260,000 for sidewalks from their project down towards Fenn, roughly to the gas station on the corner, as I recall it.
Not including the front of their property. This is an extra.
Oh, from here?
So then, who would pay the remaining balance of that? It's going to be more than $260,000, don't you think?
No, matter of fact, Commissioner Woods could verify that the square foot price on concrete is probably in the 8, 9, and so if you want to, major road, bring it up to $12 or $15 a square foot, that the actual installation is probably in the neighborhood of $60,000 to $70,000, and then there's room for soft goods, soft cost, and then there's planning and design. I'm sure the state of Connecticut is not designing this at no cost.
And what about the sidewalks, then maybe I'm confused, what about the sidewalks that they had committed to build from there to Alumni? Is that?
They didn't commit to go to the Alumni. They said that they would do sidewalks in front of their entire property. So that's what they proposed. Originally, they had sidewalks in front of their entire property, and then when the sidewalk came up for safety going down to the train station, they said that they would do their best effort to work with all the parties, and they would pay for the cost of the sidewalk to get that accomplished. Anything else, Commissioner?
No. Do we have a motion and a second, I believe?
We do have a motion and a second. You want to call for a roll call vote?
Yeah, call the vote.
Commissioner Fox?
Aye.
Commissioner Woods?
No.
Commissioner Sobieski?
Yes.
Commissioner Camillo?
Yes.
Commissioner Braverman?
Yes.
Chairman Payne?
No. Okay, I'm going to turn the meeting back over to the chairman.
Okay, that brings us to petitions for public hearing scheduling.
None.
None. Town planners report.
I have two temporary sign applications, which are in your packet. One of them is for the Christmas trees for sale banner at Stu Leonard's. It's the same. It was at the bottom of the stack when you started the folder. Yeah. I'll wait for you to find it.
Today's folder?
In today's folder, yes. Right.
You give us too much stuff.
Yeah,
This is like work.
Yeah, the problem is we have to get the agenda done a week before the meeting, and then
Here, Steve.
stuff comes in during that intervening week.
What else? What is the other
Okay,
sign?
so anyway, the Stu Leonard's Christmas tree, and the other is Chick-fil-A wants to have a coming soon banner.
Okay, on the Stu Leonard's, I think that's something that we've approved before. Anyone see any problems with that? You could take that as administratively and
Okay.
allow them to do that. On the Chick-fil-A, Commissioner comments?
Maybe you could, how big of a banner do they want to put up?
It's,
Is it any bigger than the one the contractor has?
I mean, that site is bannered to death, but
Yeah, maybe we can, and tell them if they take down the few of the banners that are there, they could put this one up. I think the steel guy's got one up. There's several of them up there now.
it'll be 32 square feet, 4 by 8.
So they want to put it on the fence, is that correct?
Let's see. They don't say where it will be, but if that's a condition of approval, if that's what the commissioner would prefer.
we don't want to tell them where to put it.
Actually, it sounds like they want to put it on the building. It says the west elevation along the Berlin Turnpike. Or is that, I mean?
Oh, you're right. Okay, I wasn't
Yeah.
reading clearly. Yes,
Yeah.
right.
So they're gonna put it
Located
up on
on the
steel.
west elevation, right, the side of the building.
The building isn't up yet, so,
Well, the steel's up.
so they want to hang it from the
That's
steel?
my guess.
Well, let's see, did they have a date?
11/5. So yes, they want to hang it from the steel.
Yes, from November 5. Yep.
Does it say how long?
From November 5 through December 24.
25 days. Do you want to make a condition that they take down some of them other signs? Or do you don't care?
I care. I'm just supposed to be a little sarcastic.
Okay. I mean, it's just while it's under construction, I'd
Yeah.
say.
I don't see a problem with it.
Mike, you okay with it?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. do that administratively and let them do it.
That's all I have.
Watch the dates, okay?
Right. Although let me just report also that the town has hired a new zoning enforcement officer / assistant town planner. He started on Monday, and he'll be at your next meeting making his first ZEO report. His name is Andrew Armstrong, and he's originally from Arizona, so he's experiencing New England firsthand.
She turned into a he. I thought.
Yeah.
Oh, did I say she
Yeah,
before?
that was last.
Oh, really? I don't know why I said that. No, it's Andrew Armstrong.
Is he on
I don't
staff
know.
now?
Yes, he started on Monday.
Well, good luck to him. Good luck to Andrew.
Any communications? Commissioner Sobieski.
Yes, I emailed the last thing I got from Krog. I just got one this afternoon. Will go out tomorrow morning.
Okay, good. Public participation, anyone from the public wishing to speak at this time, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. John?
John Vachon, 56 Maple Hill Avenue. This was a very awkward ending to a very important application, and I do agree with Dominic. We did give them some fuel. It was a very simple point to argue, and they're already in the hallway talking about getting this overturned. So I still hope that the record supports the safety issues. And to only consider the sidewalks going west was a mistake. It should have been included, the sidewalks going in both directions. I do agree with Chairman Fox that their sidewalk proposal was filled with holes and caveats. And the worst one being that if they couldn't do the sidewalk, there was still no way to reverse the permit. So to me, that tells me that that's not a sidewalk. But my opinion, and I said it clearly, people going west, people going to fast track, those are not pedestrians in the true sense. They're pedestrians temporarily, but those are commuters. Pedestrians are people who want to go for a walk for recreation or out of necessity possibly. They want to take their kid, they want to go for a bike ride. Most of those people would be going, or the majority, I believe, would be going east. And so I think that we left a lot of issues there for them to argue in court, but I still hope that the record testimony could be used to protect this commission and the town from this litigation, because they may try it. They may see themselves that it could be a losing battle because of the record, but I think I wish it went a little bit smoother and cleaner on the end there. I do agree. I think the right thing happened. You know how I petitioned you, but I wish it went a little bit cleaner at the end. And I just would like to say, I'd like to acknowledge our planner. He doesn't get a lot of credit, but he's been helpful to me, and he's been here long enough. I think guys should give him a vote of confidence at least. So we butted heads quite a little bit on items from the beginning, but I learned a lot from him too, so I appreciate him. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. Nice to see you, Chairman Aida. I too would like to thank Planner Minor for having patience with my questions. I thanked him publicly at the town council meeting last night, but he had already left, so I want to thank you now. Those of you that voted in favor, I think most of you were there, of my 824, or not my 824 referral, but the town council's 824 referral for the terminus at Elton Drive. It's done. Former Mayor Woods, been a long time coming, but the residents are very happy with it. And on a lighter note, now that these bigger things are taken care of, can we start talking about the backyard chickens? Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
I was canvassing the other day with Gary. Where the hell was it? Right on Willard Avenue. A couple of chickens all over the place.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick synopsis of the night. The only cause for a project's denial should be that the project has a significant risk to public health and safety. The zoning commission has agreed this condition exists. However, I do encourage the town of Newington and the Connecticut DOT to continue the dialogue that the application has started to find a resolution to a longstanding issue of accessibility in this area. It should not fall upon the applicant to complete this scope of work. I hope the developer continues its pursuit of this project. My only concern, as Attorney Hollister alluded to, his statement was that DOT in Newington would have to agree upon the development of sidewalks, and even upon that not being completed, it would not preclude Dakota from from proceeding with its development. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else? One more time. Anyone else wants to speak? Being none, remarks by commissioners. Any remarks at this time? I have no closing statements. We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Motion adjourned.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.